Penguin Random House Canada presents Ultra-Processed People, Why We Can't Stop Eating Food That Isn't Food, by Chris Van Tulliken.
Today, our health convening takes on ultra-processed foods. What's the actual science about what makes a food ultra-processed? What health risks are actually associated with different kinds? One interesting finding from a researcher who will join us a little later is there seems to be a big gender difference in the colorectal cancer risk from a certain category of ultra-processed food. She'll explain why women seem more susceptible and what that category of foods is. And we'll have former FDA Commissioner David Kessler, who's proposing specific new ways to regulate them, and get his take on whether RFK Jr. just talks tough on ultra-processed food corporations or is actually doing anything as Health and Human Services Secretary. But we start with some of the basic science of ultra-processed foods with a leading expert in the field, Dr. Kevin Hall, former senior investigator at the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, a health and diet expert who had done some seminal research in ultra-processed foods and disease. He also, by the way, took early retirement from the NIH last year at age 54 because he said the RFK Jr. administration was censoring him. We'll get into some of that, but more of the science. Dr. Hall, thanks for coming on. Welcome to WNYC.
Thanks for having me.
I think we should start with a definition. What are ultra-processed foods? How do you use the term?
Right. Well, it's actually a topic that's fraught with a lot of debate right now, and it's a real question about whether or not some of the debate is really trying to prolong the discussion so that the food industry can skirt by with kind of having these some of the unhealthy foods on the market, or whether there's real scientific debate about this topic. The vast majority of studies have used something called the NOVA categorization system, which was developed by Carlos Montero's team in Brazil. It basically decides to group foods into 4 different categories. The sort of minimally processed food category is group 1. That's the typical sort of fruits and vegetables and fresh meat and eggs and things like that you would typically think of as quote-unquote real foods. There's a second category, category 2, which is processed culinary ingredients. Those are the things that you typically don't eat on your own. That's like the table sugar and cooking oils and things like that. Then there's category 3, which is basically combinations of category 1 and category 2 foods, as you would kind of typically prepare them in a home kitchen. And then there's the 4th category, which is labeled ultra-processed foods. And it could be, a category by exclusion. If it's not one of the first 3 categories, it belongs there, but it also has its own definition and basically is operationalized by ingredients or processes that are typically not used in home kitchens or restaurants. So the kinds of additives and flavorants and cosmetic things that are and preservatives that are sometimes added to packaged foods that prolong their shelf life and also lead to potentially some negative health consequences.
So would you describe the landmark study that you conducted in 2019, described by the NIH at the time as the first randomized controlled trial on the topic? I see that it was small, just 20 healthy subjects and short term, just 1 month. But tell us about that study. How did you group the participants? What did they eat? And what do you think you may have established?
Yeah, sure. So it was a very small sort of mechanistic study to try to understand, is there something about ultra-processed foods per se that might be driving excess calorie intake, which is kind of on the pathway to weight gain and obesity. And what we did was we designed 2 sets of diets where the nutrients were matched between them. Not all the nutrients, but the typical players, the calories, the carbs, the fat, the protein, the sugar, the fiber, those kinds of things that we often think of as either health promoting or health deteriorating. These were matched between 2 sort of diets that we had our cooks and our dietitians design. But in one case, all those foods came, or 80% of the calories came from ultra-processed foods, that category 4 foods that we talked about in the NOVA system. And in the other case, 80% of calories came from minimally processed foods, category 1. And no ultra-processed foods. And we basically had people come to live with us in our research center at the NIH took complete control over their environments, and for 1 month continuously, they spent with us, and we either gave them for the first 2 weeks the ultra-processed diet, followed by the minimally processed diet, or the reverse. And so the same people acted as their own controls, and what we didn't tell them was that we would be measuring their leftovers, so that we could figure out exactly, we knew exactly what we presented to these people, and we could measure every morsel of food that they ate over the course of each 2-week period to figure out whether or not they were eating more or less calories on the ultra-processed diet or the minimally processed diet, despite being matched for the presented calories and many of these nutrients of concern. And we measured a variety of things during this process, including how much body fat changed and things like that. But the really striking result was that despite people not reporting any differences in fullness or appetite or desire to eat, and not reporting any differences in the pleasantness of the meals, they ended up eating on average about 500 calories per day more during the ultra-processed food environment exposure than they did during the minimally processed food environment exposure. They were spontaneously gaining weight and gaining fat when they were on the ultra-processed diet, and spontaneously losing weight and losing fat on the minimally processed diet. This is despite telling them not to be trying to, gain or lose weight on the study. In fact, they were blinded to their weight measurements. They were wearing loose-fitting clothing, so they couldn't tell if it was getting tighter or looser over the course of the experiment. So this was the first kind of causal experiment that was, on top of a wide range of previous observational studies that had linked diets high in ultra-processed foods with increased risk for obesity and various other downstream metabolic consequences.
Because the risk you were able to isolate was overeating, which leads to obesity, which is associated with diabetes and heart disease and other chronic conditions, correct?
That's correct, yes. And of course, we don't know exactly what it was about the ultra-processed foods in this diet. It wasn't that they were more heavily advertised or anything like that, or harder to kind of obtain, because basically all the food was presented to these people in the same way, and they didn't have to work for it or cook it or any of these sorts of things that are also part of the issue with making ultra-processed foods much more easily available to people.
Let's take a phone call. Here's Janet in Crown Heights. Janet, you're on WNYC with Dr. Kevin Hall. Hey there.
Good morning. I would like to know, do you think that the ultra-processed food producers are trying to make the food taste so delicious so that we will buy it, overeat it, and then come back to eat it again? Because it seems like a lot of this food is like, if we wouldn't eat it if we actually saw what it looked like, but so they have to make it taste good and last long and be easy to cook.
That's a great question. And I think it could land on, well, you found that people who were eating the ultra-processed foods diet ate more. I'm thinking of the old Lay's potato chips commercial where the slogan was, I'll bet you can't eat just one. But do you think that the food industry, the processed food industry, is designing these things not just to be tasty, but so that you will keep eating?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And by the way, those Lay's potato chips that were marketed that way, they actually don't qualify as ultra-processed foods. They qualify as processed foods, category 3, which is quite interesting. But
wait, what's the difference? People would be interested in that. Why not?
Yeah, so it doesn't contain many of the same sort of additives and preservatives that are in other sorts of potato chips and Doritos and the artificial flavors and colors and things like that. So I think to my recollection, those Lay's potato chips are basically just potatoes. They're cooking oil and salt is basically all that's in them. So they only qualify as category 3 foods. So this is where some of the debate comes from, right? Not all ultra processed foods are necessarily bad for you, and certainly many processed and minimally processed foods can be bad for you, especially when taken in context of the overall dietary pattern. But to address the specific question that the caller asked about, which is, do food companies design foods to be desired to go back for more? Of course they do, right? They want to be profitable businesses that have repeat customers, and they basically have designed these focus groups of people to kind of comment on the properties of their foods, how delicious they are, how much they pay for them, and they actually have, in some sense, it's like evolution in the marketplace, right? You have the survival of the fittest. They have their best ideas about what products are going to be successful, and if they succeed, great, and if they fail, then they've learned something from that, and they will re-engineer a new set of products that will be successful in the marketplace. So we actually have like this evolution of the most tasty, the most accessible products. Now the question is whether or not they want us or have engineered the products to have poor health outcomes and to be overeaten to cause obesity and other downstream metabolic complications. I have my questions about that because I think, soda manufacturers, for example, are perfectly willing to sell you a diet soda as they are a full calorie soda, and they will make as much or potentially more profits from the diet version. I don't work for food companies. I don't have any insight into their thinking on these processes, but it strikes me as something that is worthy of investigation.
Scott in Brooklyn has a personal anecdote to share. Scott, you're on WNYC.
Hey guys. I'm feeling a little guilty, and also this is funny at the same time, or maybe sad. But I've been on a GLP-1 for over a year, and I've dropped about almost 50 pounds. And a couple months ago, I used to have an addiction to like sugary cereals, like Frosted Flakes and Trix and all that stuff. And I do know it's bad for me, but I have to tell you, I went to the store and they were on sale, and I kind of re-upped my addiction to them, even while I'm still taking these GLP-1s, and I kind of barely eat. It's really reduced my appetite, but just eating like a bowl full of cereal twice a day, it has flatlined my weight loss. And I find that really interesting. I'm curious as to why that
flatlined your weight loss. In other words, the weight loss that you would have otherwise been continuing on the GLP-1 that isn't increasing. Yeah. So, that's interesting. That might be consistent with the finding about certain ingredients, even though he's not stuffing himself with big quantities, Dr. Hall.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's actually the topic of what I'm most interested in these days, which is how does these changes in our food environment, in particular ultra-processed foods, and the mechanisms by which they actually seem to alter the biological control of appetite. These studies are done so that people, we think that, people regulate their body weight. They have some sort of control over appetite based on this internal symphony of metabolic and hormonal signals that we've learned so much about over the past many decades. And somehow placing the same people with the same biology in these different food environments, that can be shifted by many hundreds of calories per day. And we now know that these newer generations of obesity medications are also influencing the biological control of appetite. And this interaction between this next generation of obesity medications and how our food environment is adapting to the increased uptake is, I think, a really fascinating question. We did a study where we were trying to examine whether or not ultra-processed foods that were high in fat and sugar cause the same sort of dopamine increase in the brain as many addictive substances like methamphetamine, cocaine, and even nicotine. And we were really intrigued by this sort of addiction pathway that might be taking place. And we actually were surprised by what we call as scientists a null result. We actually didn't see the same kind of dopamine increase in the brain that we had expected, and certainly not to the extent of these other addictive substances. So we still have a lot of work to do in the science of trying to understand how these, what's the biology underlying why these products are so appealing, how the food environment actually changes the biological control of appetite and regulation of body weight, how they interact with these new GLP-1 and other obesity pharmacotherapies. I think it's a really fascinating area to unpack in the future.
Fascinating. But I think the caller's experience and your answer remind us that though ultra-processed foods is a major category we should be concerned about, and we're doing this whole health convening for about an hour and a half on the topic today. It's not the only one, because I don't know what else is in those sugary cereals, but maybe the culprit for him is just sugar, which is a natural ingredient, could even be organically grown for all we know.
Absolutely, and I think that that's part of the way that a lot of the kind of debate in the scientific literature right now and between scientists is, what is it about ultra-processed foods? Is it really that they are poor in nutrient quality, that they contain lots of sugar or high fructose corn syrup? They might be high in saturated fat or high in sodium and low in fiber and lower in protein. Or is it really something else about the processing and these other sort of artificial additives and preservatives that are being added? And that's where I think, we run into this problem, because there is a solid body of nutritional evidence on these kind of more traditional factors like sugar being in excess being bad for people, and an increasing risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes and a variety of other conditions. So unpacking the details about what it is about these dietary patterns that are poor for our health is, I think, really should be at the forefront, as opposed to just painting a wide brush and saying, oh, it's just ultra-processed foods. We don't have to think about the nutrient composition, or we just have to think about the nutrient composition and don't worry about how they're produced. This is where the debate is in the science right now.
Dr. Kevin Hall, former senior investigator at the National Institutes of Health, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been incredibly informative.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, there are many, many religions throughout the planet. Now, of all the religions, what is the strongest one? And that's what I came up with. So I decided to put it in capital letters, the religion of white supremacy.
3 years ago, the Church of England promised to spend roughly $130 million on slavery reparations, aiming to address some of the wrongs created from its historical ties to the transatlantic slave trade. The Church is yet to specify how this money will be spent or who will benefit. But the initial aim of Project Spire was to invest in communities adversely affected by historical chattel slavery, as well as to fund research and education. But today, no money has been spent, and the chief architect of the project, Bishop Rosemary Mallett, has told the BBC the window is narrowing on being able to deliver what the church promised. Opponents of the project say they're determined to block it. Our religion editor, Ali Maqbool, has more details.
There is a paved area which we can walk through shortly. Have a look at that.
At Rochester Cathedral, Reverend Philip Hesketh, the Dean, shows me renovations made in the 18th century.
There were 7 Georgian houses. Those houses were built as accommodation for staff, for clergy, and an organist's house.
Except what they've discovered is that they were paid for by the profits made when the Dean back then invested in a company that trafficked slaves.
It's important to identify it, acknowledge it, and to tell that story.
It's the kind of reckoning that's been going on across the Church of England since the killing of George Floyd. The most breathtaking revelation was made in 2023. Research into the origins of the Church's multi-billion-pound endowment fund showed that for much of the 18th century, investments were also poured into a company that had a monopoly on transporting enslaved Africans to the Spanish Americas, making vast amounts of money.
It absolutely felt like a watershed moment.
The Right Reverend Rosemary Mallett is Bishop of Croydon.
Once something is brought to the light, you cannot push it back into the darkness. So clearly, with this deep connection to African chattel enslavement, that could no longer be hidden.
When the investigation was published, the Church apologised and immediately announced the setting up of Project Spire, a new £100 million social impact fund aimed at starting to make amends. But the voices of opposition have grown loud. One of the most prominent is Lord Nigel Biggar, Conservative peer, theologian and ordained priest. He says the Church needs to stop saying sorry for slavery, especially when Anglicans were instrumental in abolishing it.
I don't think it helps race relations to exploit white guilt in terms of a narrative of white oppression, black victimhood. I mean, some whites were guilty, but let's be clear, some whites were liberating and emancipatory.
But you're talking about emancipation happening after the complicity.
Yes, there was some complicity. We repented big time 200 years ago, and now we're doing it again, and we're becoming obsessed with it.
Lord Biggar, an influential voice in the church, thinks investing on the basis of race is divisive, and also doesn't accept people now are affected by what their ancestors went through. That's not what Father Andrew Mumby sees in his own congregation at St Peter's in South London.
I see every day here in Walworth structural inequality, poverty, and in this borough there is a very high proportion of people who are from a black Caribbean background. So we know that those things overlap.
Father Andrew says not addressing historic injustice perpetuates division. But some have questioned the historical premise of the Church's financial investigation, and earlier this year 27 politicians wrote to the Church saying using its investment funds on anything other than supporting clergy and parishes was illegal. Conservative MP Katie Lamb said it would also put off parishioners from donating.
If you give your money to a donkey sanctuary, that money cannot instead be used for a domestic violence shelter. Now, that's not a value judgment.
The Church has said no donations coming in are to be used for reparatory justice. But for now, Project Spire's money goes unspent. Bishop Rosemary Mallett, leading Spire's committee, has already felt the backlash and thinks a changing political climate is making things harder.
I don't think the terrain is as easy as it was 5 years ago. We have seen greater divisiveness. All of that noise has made people more nervous about striding forward.
Do you think it's going to deliver?
I pray. I hope. I think the window is still there, but I think it has narrowed.
Bishop Rosemary Mallett ending that report from Ali Maqbul. And for more on that story, you can listen to File on 4 Investigates wherever you get your podcasts.
Philadelphia's own. We're just a few weeks away from celebrating the nation's 250th birthday, so I went to the city called the birthplace of America, Philadelphia. It was right here at Independence Hall that the Founding Fathers signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Philadelphia became the nation's first capital, George Washington its first president. He lived a block away. For decades and decades, people have come to these few old city blocks, all cobblestone and red brick, to steep themselves in this history of American freedom. But producer Henry Larson and I came because of a battle playing out right now over that history, specifically over whether the National Park Service, which runs these historic sites, should have to tell the stories of the black people who were part of it. We're standing here looking at this beautiful rear facade of Independence Hall, and then you turn around, and just a few steps away is the house where George Washington, when he was president during those early years, lived. And not only where he lived, but where he enslaved 9 people.
Austin, Paris, Hercules, Christopher Shields, Richmond, Giles, Only Judge.
Michael Cord is reading their names, etched onto a wall at the site of Washington's house. Cord's a lawyer and an activist, and like many Philadelphians, he was stunned in the early 2000s when a local historian unearthed records that George and Martha Washington had brought 9 slaves to work for them here.
Many of us knew that he enslaved, but not many knew that 9 were held right here in Philadelphia. So I was enraged. I put together a group of local activists. We formed
He called it the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. It began pressing the Park Service to create an exhibit. It took years, but in 2010 it was finished. The house, long gone except for its foundations, was partially rebuilt. Panels and video screens along the walls told the stories of George Washington's 9 enslaved workers.
It was the grand opening of the first slave memorial of its kind on federal property in the history of the United States of America. We thought it would last forever, but 15 years later, the destruction came.
Last year, President Trump signed an executive order titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. It ordered national parks and historic sites to remove any exhibit or display that, quote, inappropriately disparages Americans, past or living. A few months later, federal workers showed up at the slavery exhibit here at the president's house with crowbars.
There were 34 interpretive panels to tell this whole story. They pulled all 34 down. I felt like a part of my soul was being ripped out with each interpretive panel being ripped out. Because this is my story.
At national parks and historic sites across the U.S., the Trump administration has for months been removing displays about slavery and other ugly chapters in U.S. history. Trump's order said that telling history this way deepens societal divides and fosters a sense of national shame. This week, a federal judge temporarily blocked the president's order, but it's not clear what that will mean for the slavery exhibit here in Philly, which has already been partially restored because of a separate lawsuit brought by the city.
City of Philadelphia against the Secretary, U.S. Department of Interior.
And so some of the exhibit at the president's house has been restored, but a lot is still missing. To get a sense of what the exhibit's removal has meant, we met Raina Yancey at the house. It's been 5 months since the exhibit came down, but her shock hasn't gone away.
I wasn't prepared for the full range of emotions that overcame me. I don't know, I'm still upset. I'm still angry.
7 years ago, Yancey started a company called The Black Journey. She gives walking tours about Philadelphia's black history. Here at President Washington's house, she always tells the story of Ona Judge, who ran away, escaped to freedom. Yancey gave me a bit of the tour.
So you have about 50% of the walls as it would have had. We're walking to a wall that once held a panel information about the dirty business of slavery. There are metal brackets of where the panels used to be secured to the wall.
We're looking at an empty wall now.
We're looking at an empty wall. It doesn't make sense without the context. There are footprints that are supposed to represent Ona Judge's triumphant escape in the ground. They're bronze, they're beautiful, but it doesn't make sense without the story, what the significance of the names etched in granite, the footprints. It doesn't make sense.
When you're bringing people through this house, what is the story you're trying to tell them while you're standing right here, while we're standing right now?
I want them to understand that history of slavery in the United States is from the very beginning, from the very top. And I also want to tell the story of triumph, that people stood up for themselves, in particular Ona Judge. She emancipated herself. She was a young woman. She had no idea where she was going. She knew she would never see her family again.
Yancey tells me that after she learned the story of Judge's escape and the stories of the other 8 enslaved workers, she felt an urge to tell as many people as possible. Did you ever consider, after those panels came down, not doing the tours?
No. I see the Black Journey as stewards of this history, and we saw how easily the history was previously lost for over a century, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
How do you grapple with this paradox of slavery in the shadow of independent thought?
I call it hypocrisy. On the tour, we share a picture of the founders. There's a famous oil painting, and it's supposed to depict the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And there are red dots on the faces of most of the founders, and I always ask the visitors, well, what do you think those red dots represent? And of course it represents those that owned human beings.
When people are making that realization as you're telling them that story, what do you notice come across their faces?
Some people thought about it, but for some people it's like the first time that that's clicked, and they realize, oh my, like there are like so many levels of freedom right in this square block. And so we want to make sure that the panels tell the full story of slavery and how people did self-emancipate. It was so intolerable to so many people, and people resisted in so many ways.
In his executive order, President Trump directed the Parks Department to remove exhibits that did not emphasize American greatness. What does that say to you?
I think Ona Judge's story is a prime example of American greatness, of self-emancipating herself, to create her own life, her own story, and people need to understand it so that we don't go back Just by taking the panels down, you can't make it disappear. You can't make that history go away.
We asked the Trump administration for an interview. The Interior Department sent us a statement saying the administration, quote, is committed to celebrating and acknowledging the full breadth of our nation's history. It also sent us a link to new exhibit panels it wants to replace the ones it removed. These new panels would tell some of the story of the people Washington enslaved at his Philadelphia house, but they also downplay their possible suffering, suggesting they had better lives than slaves at Washington's plantation in Virginia. As we walked through the house with Raina Yancey, we noticed something. All the little acts of public rebellion. On some of the walls, people had taped up handwritten explanations of why the exhibit was missing.
So the signs are removed by the Department of the Interior every day, these protest signs. There's facsimiles of what used to be there, printed on, 8x10 paper. But every day they're taken down in the evening, and every day people exercise their First Amendment rights and replace them.
In front of another wall, a woman named Nakia Stevenson was reading aloud from a white binder.
1793, the Fugitive Slave Act.
She told me it was the text from the missing panels.
Very passionate about history, and I am obviously African American, so this is my history that they're trying to erase.
Michael Cord, the activist who fought to have this exhibit created, says it's urgent to get it back up before July 4th, when thousands of people will stream into Philadelphia.
So either the federal government is going to tell the story, or damn it, we'll tell the story.
He's planning a number of events here to tell the story of black people's fight for freedom in the birthplace of American freedom. This week on June 19th, communities across the U.S. will celebrate Juneteenth, the holiday that commemorates the day in 1865 that the last enslaved people in the U.S., in Texas, learned that slavery had been abolished, that they were free. Corina Torralba Harrington always celebrated this day with her family growing up. In northern Mexico,
we always called it El Baile de los Negros, or El Día del Negro, or El 19, or the Day of the Black, or the 19th. And that was like our celebration. I didn't know that anybody else celebrated that.
Torralba Harrington was born in Nacimiento, a tiny Mexican town near the border with Texas. She knew her ancestors and the ancestors of many people in town were black, but not much more.
We didn't really know the history.
She and many there had long thought their celebration each June 19th was to commemorate the day the town was founded. But that began to change when, in 2015, she went looking for the graves of her grandparents in southern Texas.
When my brother and I arrived to that cemetery, we found so much more than what we thought. We were like, why is it the Seminole Cemetery?
The Seminoles were a mixed-race community that formed when black people escaping slavery in southern states found refuge with Native American Seminoles in Florida. Her graveside discovery stunned her.
Because I didn't even know that we were black from the Seminoles of Florida.
She set off on a journey to learn the history and her family's ties to it. She learned that some black Seminoles in Florida, fearing they could once again lose their freedom, kept going.
And they decided to come to Mexico since slavery had already been abolished there and work for the Mexican government at the borders, protecting the borders in Mexico.
Torralba took trips across the South. In South Carolina, she was knocked over to hear songs she recognized from her childhood.
The songs that they sing there, some of them are songs that we still preserve in El Nacimiento. The spirituals that our ancestors sang, I was just like, this is our connection, this is how we're connected.
And in Texas, where she now lives and where African Americans have long celebrated Juneteenth, she finally drew the connection.
I realized that the Juneteenth celebration that was celebrated here in Texas was the same celebration that we celebrated in Mexico.
Her hometown celebration, she realized, was part of something much bigger. Karina Torralba Harrington now discusses with people there their connections to Black and Indigenous people struggling for their freedom.
Our celebration is just like a big family reunion. Everybody talks to everybody. The young kids, men, women, on horses. The food's free for everybody. Anybody that comes can eat. We celebrate in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the United States.
That's Karina Torralba Harrington on her Mexican families and hometowns connection to Juneteenth.
This may be my last time. This may be my last time, children. This may.
Medical apartheid. The dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to the present.
Disparities in health and health care between racial and ethnic groups are real. These differences in access to care, quality of care, being able to afford a prescription, whether a preventable disease or condition like hypertension or diabetes is diagnosed and treated early, these differences mean unnecessary early death for many. Measuring and reporting on health and racial disparities, that tells us a lot. We learned that state public health policy choices have long-lasting consequences for people's lives. And a new report found that Texas has more severe racial and ethnic health disparities than any other state in the Southwest. David Radley is a senior scientist for the Commonwealth Fund's Tracking Health System Performance Initiative. He's also director of data and analytics at the Center for Evidence-Based Policy at Oregon Health and Science University. David Radley, welcome to The Source.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So this new report from the Commonwealth Fund, it makes things look pretty bad in Texas. So what do you got?
Well, I mean, things in Texas are maybe they're bad, but I think the sort of the takeaway from the report is that we see these kinds of disparities, the kinds that you just described. We see them in every state in the country. Even states that we generally think of as having pretty good health systems, even there we see big disparities. Texas is no different. We do see big disparities across the state in the kinds of things that you just mentioned. Whether it's access to care, whether it's health outcomes, whether it's the quality of care that people receive, we find that where you live and your racial and ethnic background play a big part in how well the system is working for you.
But these are systems that are designed. These are systems that are created through a public policy. The people who run the state make decisions. I mean, Texas is one of the worst public health funded states, 45th in the nation, as from what I've read. So that matters.
I mean, absolutely. When we look at a report like this, and when we look across the country, this is actually exactly why we look at these reports and why we compare states and look across the country. We find, even though in this report we find big disparities, we do find that in some states the disparities are smaller. That proves your point that when the state policy matters, and when policymakers sort of align their interests, if public health and healthcare access, for example, are the focus of those policy interests, you absolutely can make take big steps to reduce the amount of disparity within your state.
Our phone lines are open. We want to hear from our listeners about these disparities. Have you seen them? Have they impacted your family, loved ones? Knowing that Texas has not expanded Medicaid, we underfund public health. it's very difficult for people who are on the margins in order to access health care, quality health care, get prescriptions, be able to get diagnosed and treated for conditions like diabetes. This is something that the community should know and should be able to talk about. Give us a call, 833-877-8255, 833-TPR-TALK. So, David Radley, tell me more about this Commonwealth report. What are y'all looking at? What are you tracking?
So the report itself looks at 24 measures grouped into three sort of buckets. We look at healthcare access, we look at health outcomes, and we look at the quality of care that people receive. And when we take each one of those 24 measures and we break those down by race and ethnicity. So we can look at the experience for Asian Americans, American Indians, for Black people, for Hispanic people, and for white people. And the data that we're looking at generally reflects what was going on in 2024. I mean, these data sources always have a little bit of a time lag in them. I think that matters even though the kinds of data that we're looking at don't necessarily change very rapidly over time. And so 2024 data is still very relevant. I do think that the timing matters in this particular report because we know that there's a lot of policy change at the federal level that's going to affect Medicaid in states across the country, including Texas, including states that haven't expanded Medicaid. And we know that those changes, at the federal level, they're going to trickle down. And we expect that some of the kinds of disparities that we see in this report may actually get worse over time.
So there's a buzzsaw heading towards Texas and other states in regards to being able to provide health care to many people.
Yes.
And that's, I guess, that's a result of the big, beautiful bill, as the Trump administration calls it.
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing, some of the effects of some of the policy choices that, at the federal level. For example, the decision to not extend the pandemic era premium subsidies. That's had a big impact. I don't know the numbers exactly for Texas, but it's had a big impact already on for people who were buying health insurance plans through the marketplace. A lot of people are either having to they're forced to make a choice. Do I continue to buy this plan through the marketplace without subsidy, or do I have to cancel that plan? And if they continue to buy it, that most likely that's leaving less money for other things in their lives.
So the concern is, like, some people have access to primary medical care, other people don't. What happens when someone does not have access to primary medical care?
Sure. I mean, Texas has one of the highest uninsured. In fact, let me say it again. Texas has the highest uninsured rate in the country. About 22% of Texans don't have any form of health insurance. When those people get sick or when those people need emergency health care, they go to an emergency room or they get hospitalized. When they can't pay for care, those costs trickle down and they get spread across the system in terms of hospitals needing to charge higher prices to account for uncompensated care. Those higher prices get turned into, ultimately they get turned into health insurance premiums that people, even with employer-sponsored insurance, pay for. So when people lack health coverage, they still use health care. The difference is that the costs that they incur get spread out and paid for by everyone else.
So what is the connection in your findings in this Commonwealth Fund report between the lack of access to health care and early unnecessary deaths?
Well, we find that in general, that states where access is worse, they tend to have higher rates of premature death, so death before age 75 from various causes. Texas is a little unique in that sense, though. Texas is the second youngest state in the country. In Texas, even though the access metrics don't look particularly strong, a lot of the outcome measures are pretty middle of the pack. So, in terms, pretty close to the national average, I mean. So I don't know how strong of a correlation that is in Texas, but in general, we know that there's a strong correlation between access to care and health outcomes.
Let's go to a caller, Henrietta. Henrietta, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Disparity is the correct word to say, because many times they have Medicare and Medicaid and don't get the right treatment. And what diabetes does is affects the kidneys, and is one of the creatinine level is very high. Right away, they want to put them in what I call dialysis farms. And we have a lot of dialysis farms, and many times they don't have to be on dialysis. And I'm telling you this because of a personal problem with my two sons. They tried to do that, but they were not very successful because they were smart enough to tell them the kidneys can heal themselves too. But like I told the doctor, this is not a horse race, it's a burro race, because the burros work hard and they're slow, but they're slowly healing themselves.
All right, Henrietta, thank you for the call. So diabetes, it's a chronic disease that we have here in the San Antonio and across South Texas. So how does delaying care mean that manageable conditions like diabetes and hypertension can likely become medical emergencies?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, when we don't treat chronic illness, I mean, that it becomes acute illness. When with diabetes in particular, if we don't treat the diabetes, you can end up, in a situation where you may face, problems with your eyes, you may face, problems with your feet, and in the most severe cases, even have to get a foot or a leg amputated. Those are the most horrible outcomes that we try to avoid, and the best way to do that is by having a primary care doc or in the case of diabetes, a specialist who treats diabetes. Keeping that disease managed, keeping the blood sugars under control, and staying out of the hospital as best as we can. Obviously, if you need to have your leg amputated, the hospital is the place to do it, but we want to treat the disease before it gets to that point.
So in your report, Texas is ranked 45th for health system performance for the Hispanic population. What does that mean? So given the fact that Hispanic population is a large part of the state's population, over half, that's, you have to recognize that means that it's an indictment for Texas.
Well, what the ranking of 45th means is that compared to other states, the Hispanic population in Texas is really not being served particularly well by the healthcare system in the state. When we look at why that might be, it really comes down to some of these metrics of healthcare access that we've already discussed. I mentioned earlier that Texas has the highest uninsured rate in the country. Nationally, about a quarter of Hispanic people lack health insurance, but in Texas, that's 34%. So more than a third. That's a huge jump. Again, nationally, uninsured kids, about 10% of kids are uninsured nationally. But in Texas, 20% of Hispanic kids are uninsured. So these are our kids under age 18. They only have access because of their parents' ability to sort of provide for them. And 1 in 5 Hispanic children in Texas lacks health insurance. So
I keep bringing this up about the lack of funding for public health in the state of Texas compared to other states. Texas is ranked 45th in the nation for funding of public health. How does that impact? So if we don't have a lot of health insurance, it's highest in the country for no health insurance, and underfunding public health simultaneously, isn't that a 1-2 punch that really hurts the most vulnerable populations?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the way that shows up, it could show up in less regulation or less ability to observe environmental factors that can impact different populations. We know that environmental factors have a disproportionate impact on low-income populations, and so when we think about the role of public health, and whether it's environment, whether it's the role of doing vaccination and that kind of preventive of healthcare. It's so critical, and it's most critical for low-income populations who aren't necessarily being cared for particularly well by the healthcare delivery system.
So how could reductions or tighter eligibility rules for Medicaid and SNAP affect health outcomes, especially for people who don't have health insurance, and even for people who have health insurance?
Right. Well, so, health insurance really comes down, is really the foundation of a high-performing health system. We know that Texas has, world-renowned hospitals, Houston Methodist, Baylor Scott and White. These are hospitals with fantastic reputations for providing high-quality care, but it doesn't matter if you can't get in the door. And so we need to have, health insurance really is the foundation. Texas isn't an expansion state. We've talked about that. But it's also, a relatively low-income state. Under 30% of the people in Texas live under the 200% of the poverty level. That's higher than in other states. If Texas were to expand its Medicaid program, I understand that politically that may not be on the table, but that would, provide health insurance for many low-income people in the state, and it really would, help those individuals identify disease earlier, treat and manage chronic disease if those chronic diseases are present, and ultimately it would keep those sick individuals from using the most expensive healthcare resources in emergency rooms and in uncompensated hospitalizations.
This the city of Chicago.
When plans for the Obama Presidential Center were announced more than a decade ago, community organizers warned that the project could drive up housing costs and force longtime residents out of nearby neighborhoods like Woodlawn and South Shore. After years of advocacy, the city passed protections that were supposed to preserve affordable housing and create opportunities for local residents. But a new investigation from the Illinois Answers Project finds several of the promises fell short. Millions of dollars set aside for housing programs weren't used. A tenant home ownership pilot wasn't enforced, and only 3 locals were hired for available jobs. In this next conversation, we'll dig into what went wrong, how the city is working to resolve the problem, and what it all means for people who live in Woodlawn. At the table with me is Infinity Gant, who's Southside Together housing organizer and former Woodlawn resident, and Sydney King Pineda, who's a reporter and from Illinois Answers Project. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Good to see you both. I'm going to start with you, Infinity, because not only are you working with the current residents in the Woodlawn area to sort of help them through these situations, but you've got a personal connection to the neighborhood yourself. So tell us a bit about your story.
Yes, so I grew up in Woodlawn and went to school in South Shore. So that big, tall, high-rise on 63rd and Stony Island, Island Terrace, that's home. That's where I spent a significant portion of my childhood. However, due to, the building not keeping up maintenance, just not taking care of what we were complaining about. We had a pest infestation, and we got displaced. So ever since then, I have been trying to move back. Well, I was a child, so ever since I've become an adult coming back to Chicago, I've been trying to get back to Woodlawn.
You're trying to make your way back because you ended up moving further south.
Yeah.
Right.
So now I'm right across the street from Chicago State, on 95th and King Drive. But I work in Woodlawn, and I want to make sure that I can come back to South Shore or Woodlawn, so that I can better do my work, so that I can be comfortable in where I grew up.
Yeah, what's familiar, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So when the Obama Presidential Center announcement happened a little over 10 years ago, tell me your initial thoughts then, knowing your personal connection to the area where it was going to be built.
I think when I first heard about it, right, there is the initial excitement that the Obama Center is going to be in the neighborhood. And so my view was north facing of Jackson Park. So I knew that like, oh, if I can get back in this building, that's the perfect view to see it, to still see downtown and all of that. But honestly, around the time that I found out about it, because it was just like whispers before 2015 is like when I went off to school.
Right.
So by the time I came back, I saw like before and after pictures of Jackson Park, and I just kind of knew the implications for the neighborhood, right? I knew that like when something big comes in, the assumption is that you get to benefit, but in practice, that's not always how it happened.
Right. And I'm sure, of course, knowing that you had to leave because, for your family, it became too expensive. I'm sure you're thinking, with the, this large investment, are we going to be able to afford to come back? Can I afford to come back as an adult?
Exactly.
Right. So Sydney, let's talk more about this. Tell me how much rent and mortgages have gone up in Woodlawn, since that announcement.
Yeah, we've seen mortgages double over the last 10 years in the Woodlawn area, and obviously that trickles down to renters too, right? We've spoken to several renters who over the last 5 years, they've seen their rents increase, from $100 to $200 a month, which is a lot of money when you add it up at the end of the year.
Yeah, and for over a decade, Infinity, you've been working with Southside Together. That group's been organizing residents to push for protections to keep folks from getting displaced. Walk us through just the highlights that led to what's called the Woodlawn Housing Protection Ordinance. It was passed back in 2020 under Lightfoot.
Yeah, so the Obama Center was announced in 2015. I think that's when people in the neighborhood knew that something needed to be done, right? We knew the implications of a big development coming into a low-income neighborhood. And so that is when the coalition building started happening.
Right.
2016 is when it was announced that it would be in Jackson Park. So we knew, again, that we had to make sure that we were getting some protections.
Right.
That same year, there was an event where Obama was speaking and talking about, the Obama Center coming into the neighborhood and celebrating, and Jeanette Taylor, she's now the 20th Ward Alderman. But at the time she wasn't. She was just asking, like, are there going to be protections for people in the neighborhood?
Right.
Will we be able to get a CBA?
So this Woodlawn Housing Protection Ordinance, it's got 5 main goals, right? It's to help protect existing residents from displacement, create new rental and for sale housing opportunities that are affordable, right? Ensure that the existing housing stock offers good quality housing, promotes housing options to support equitable and inclusive income diversity in Woodlawn, and also supporting economic development opportunities. You and your colleagues, Sydney, I'm talking about Bingwei Wong and Andrew Adams, you looked into how effectively this ordinance has been enforced. Tell me the big takeaways from your investigative reporting.
Yeah, so essentially what we found, is, you mentioned some of the goals of the ordinance. It was a package of laws, and what we found is most of the programs honestly didn't get off the ground. They were underfunded, they were under-resourced. Some of the programs didn't have staff people in the department dedicated to enforce them. And what we found is there are a lot of instances where tenants could have been protected, should have been protected by the law, but because the city wasn't able to execute on the ordinance, they were displaced.
When landlords sell their buildings, right, that process comes with a lot of uncertainty for the people who are renting there. The ordinance was supposed to lessen the impact of surprise sales and give these residents a chance to be the first to actually put in an offer on the building. Did that happen?
It did not. So the ordinance included a tenant right of first refusal program, and it essentially required landlords to notify the city and their tenants when they were planning to sell the building. And if they didn't do that, they could have been fined and penalized by the city. We found that no landlords notified the city or their tenants when they were selling the building. And we also found that the city did not enforce any of the available penalties to show, hey, there are consequences for breaking this law. And what we did find was that even now there are a group of tenants in Woodlawn who are facing a non-renewal because their new landlord who bought the building wants to renovate. And, like in Infinity's case, the market is more difficult, right? It's harder to find a place that's comparable and affordable.
Yeah. You also found $2 million that was set aside by the city for 2 different programs to preserve and rehab affordable housing was never spent.
Correct. Yeah.
Why not?
The city says that the money was time bound, and so it had to be reallocated somewhere else. But what we found was that, the city wrote the ordinance when the market said one thing was possible. But then they, I guess, found out that it wasn't possible in the time. And so, the money just sat to the side. There's another pot of $500,000 that still has not been used.
Do we know where it was reallocated?
No, we haven't gotten clarity from the city on that.
Now tell us, Sydney, what did the city do to increase affordable housing in the area?
So there's 2 programs one that really worked, one that kind of worked. Okay. The city was supposed to set aside 52 vacant lots that are owned by the city to incentivize developers to build affordable housing. One project did come out of the ground of those 52.
Okay.
And it's called Park Station Lofts, and it's available for people to live in today. And there was another program that just provided direct aid to homeowners. So, grants of $20,000 to people to fix leaky roofs, to fix piping, things like that, so that they could stay in their homes. And that program we found was incredibly effective and well liked by the neighbors.
Right. What is it like for you, Infinity, hearing this data?
I think that, we, even going into, trying to get the ordinance passed, right? We knew that the city was the target. We knew that we needed to hold them accountable to making sure that, people in the neighborhood were going to be protected, and able to stay. And, I think so there was 5 years of fighting to get the things passed. But even when we got the win, we knew that it wasn't enough. It was still some stuff that was written out. Yeah. It was still, more protections that we needed for the neighborhood. Even when we won the 52, city-owned vacant lots, they hadn't been named at the time, and there's a time limit on there, right? And so we already knew that the fight wasn't over. We knew that there were more protections and so we kept organizing. And yeah, that's how we were able to win the protections in 2025.
Sydney, how was the city able to execute on the local hiring piece of this?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, that Park Station Lofts development, the developer had to submit a plan for hiring in accordance with the ordinance. They planned for 19 local hires, and they ended up hiring 3.
3 people.
So
you talked about one program that actually worked. It gave grants to homeowners who needed help making repairs. Tell us more about how much money was spent and how it helped residents out. I know you talked to at least one gentleman who was able to fix his home.
Yeah, Woodlawn. Certainly. This is definitely a type of program that community members and, Infinity mentioned Jeanette Taylor, the alderperson, say is most effective, right? Direct aid. Give us dollars in our hands so that we can fix our homes and stay in them. We talked to several homeowners who were able to fix up their properties. One who rents out the basement unit of his duplex, and he says, the grant helped him stay in the neighborhood. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been habitable.
Yeah. Now, note to listeners here, we invited Chicago's Housing Commissioner, Lisette Castaneda, to join us for today's conversation. She wasn't available, but the department did send this statement. It reads in part, while we acknowledge the difficulties of legislation from a previous administration, we want to honor the work of advocates and residents who organized and demanded that the government work in service of their neighbors. To that end, DOH has gone beyond the requirements of the ordinance order to address its limitations by bringing residents back together to tackle concerns. This relaunched working group will focus on providing recommendations to promote development without displacement and expand economic opportunity for residents. I want to hear from both of you. Your thoughts on that statement, Infinity?
We are in the process of, again, trying to get more protections, right? Our end goal, honestly, is going deeper into the protections that we've won and making sure that those become citywide, because we know that this is not just a Woodlawn issue, not just a South Shore issue. It's just exacerbated there. But eventually the end goal is like, I won't even say end goal, but a big marker for us is rent control. People need control over how much they're paying in rent. Mm-hmm. Right now there is a ban on capping rent. But that's a statewide fight that we are in the process of. So we're happy that the city is, trying to take steps toward that, but we still need more.
Yeah. Well, based on, folks that you talked to and what you found out in your reporting, Sydney, does that sound like enough, what the city is saying?
Yeah, I think community input is good. These working groups existed before the original ordinance was passed. It's always good to speak with the community. I think the real measure of success for the city will be not what you can just write down or what laws you can pass, but how you can actually execute them. And that's going to take resourcing, it's going to take money, and it's going to take people. And so we'll see in the future, right? What comes of it.
As you said, Infinity, it's been, at least a decade of work from Southside Together. You didn't stop when you won that Woodlawn ordinance 6 years ago. It led to another anti-displacement ordinance passing just last September. Yeah. How do you hope that Jackson Park housing pilot ordinance benefits folks who live in the area?
So a piece of this, again, was because we knew that the Woodlawn ordinance wasn't strong enough, right? Also, the goal for the Woodlawn ordinance was to be for all neighborhoods like near the Obama Center by the lake to be protected. South Shore was one of the notable neighborhoods that was written out. And so we knew that that was going to be a neighborhood highly affected by what's going on with the Obama Center coming in and prices going up. So number one, we wanted to make sure that South Shore got some benefits too. But also the reason that Woodlawn is still a part of this ordinance is because it needed to be strengthened there too.
Right.
So yeah, we passed a lot of things for making sure that, people are, so we're trying to do two things. Number one, the real estate market and landlords are not regulated. And they get away with a lot of things. Like we've been talking about, they haven't reported when they're going to buy a building or sell a building or telling tenants, things like that's happening very often. So we want to make sure that the landlords are held accountable. On the flip side, we're also trying to give tenants more power. So giving them the opportunity to buy a property that's being sold or, giving them resources so that they can stay in the neighborhood. So the goal is both of those things helping tenants.
So, Sydney, what is in place to do what Infinity said, to make sure that this Jackson Park ordinance doesn't meet the same fate as the Woodlawn one?
Yeah, ultimately that's up to the city, right? A lot of the programs that were in the Woodlawn ordinance are also in the Jackson Park ordinance. I do think one thing that's significant is those 52 lots are now named, right? It's not just a hypothetical set of lots. They have addresses, they have PIN numbers, and so the city can be held accountable in that regard. But the city has the mechanisms to hold landlords accountable. They just have to do it.
Just have to execute. That's Infinity Gant, who's a Southside Together housing organizer, and Sydney King Pineda, who's a reporter with the Illinois Answers Project. Her great story is online at illinoisanswers.org. Thank you both.
Rapper Mystical has been sentenced to 20 years in prison without the possibility of parole on a third-degree rape charge.
A case we were following closely. Louisiana First News reporter Michelle Maslon has the latest details from Ascension Parish.
After years of legal proceedings, the case against Louisiana rapper Mystical reaches its conclusion. The 55-year-old New Orleans native, whose real name is Michael Tyler, was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
I think as a celebrity, sometimes trouble finds him.
Prosecutors say Tyler sexually assaulted a woman at his Prairieville home in 2022. During the sentencing hearing, the victim delivered an emotional impact statement. She told the court she was raped and tortured for hours while pleading for her life. She went to the hospital where she was given a rape kit, which showed injuries consistent with her account of what happened. She said the assault continues to impact her physical and mental health 4 years later. Tyler spoke before the court imposed its sentence after hearing the victim speak. He said, "If that's what I did, I deserve every day of this sentence. I'm sorry. I hope you heal." The judge thanked both for addressing the court before handing down the sentence. Tyler will receive credit for time already served. Upon his release from prison, he'll be required to register as a sex offender. This is not his first conviction for a sex crime. Tyler previously pled guilty to similar charges more than 2 decades ago and served 6 years in prison. He has 30 days to appeal Tuesday's sentence. Michelle Masson, Louisiana First News.
And Mr. Tyler was taken into custody following the hearing.
Yeah. You're still saying there's no profiling, but it is. It is. We're being hunted every day. It's a silent war against African American people as a whole.
The hunt is on. And you're the prey.
Mother of a young man shot to death by Milwaukee police tells 12 News her son was assassinated. Investigators allowed her to view the officer's body camera video. It has not yet been made public. 12 News' Nick Bohr reports from 84th and Links, where 22-year-old Jalen Brown died after an exchange of gunfire with police.
Milwaukee police shut down 84th Street south of Mill Road last Friday after 2 reported attempted armed robberies. They pursued 22-year-old Jalen Brown into an apartment building after they say he fired at them. After a 1-hour standoff, 4 officers opened fire, fatally shooting him.
My son did have some mental health issues, and I explained that to them.
We spoke with Brown's mother, DeLynn, the day he was shot. Tuesday, in accordance with police department policy, she was allowed to view some of the body cam video of the shooting. Today, she told 12 News the video shows her son was shot multiple times, collapsed, and an officer shot him again.
He said he got a gun. Said, drop the gun. Jalen said, I can't move. And he stood there for a second, pointed his gun down, and shot my son center mass in his chest while he was already down on the floor. So my son never raised up from the floor. He never was turning to the side. He was just laid flat on the floor while this man assassinated him.
12 News has not been able to verify her account because the video has not yet been made public. Department policy requires its release within 15 days. Brown says she's hiring a lawyer to explore a lawsuit over Jalen's death. In Milwaukee, Nick Bohr, WISN 12 News.
Waukesha police are investigating the shooting as part of the Milwaukee area investigative team. We reached out to Milwaukee police for comment. They tell 12 News they cannot comment on the investigation nor respond to Brown's comments.
And some began to say the threats, talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers.
Man charged with pushing, using racial slur against 9-year-old Naperville child. A Plainfield man has been charged with a hate crime for allegedly calling a 9-year-old Naperville boy the N-word during an altercation which he pushed the child and threw his bike, officials said. The incident stemmed from an incident Saturday in which a girl, later identified as the daughter of the suspect's girlfriend, damaged a fort that the boy and his friends had been building, a news release from the Naperville Police Department and the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office said. The boy went to the girl's house in the 1400 block of West Jefferson Avenue and was confronted by Jeffrey Feigenbaum, 29, of the 15800 block of Cove Circle, who called him the racial slur, pushed him and tossed his bike as the child fled, the release said. Feigenbaum was arrested by Naperville police and charged with 2 counts of felony hate crime and 1 count each of misdemeanor battery and disorderly conduct. At a court hearing Sunday, a judge ordered Feigenbaum to be fitted with a GPS monitoring device. It was also mandated that Feigenbaum remain at least 5,000 feet away from the victim, his residence and his school, and that he turn over all firearms, ammunition or other weapons to the police department, the release said. Feigenbaum's next court hearing is scheduled for July 13th. The allegations against Mr. Feigenbaum are very disturbing, State's Attorney Robert Berlin said in a statement. Hate crimes have no place in a civilized society. DuPage County is comprised of dozens of extremely welcoming and diverse communities, and the type of behavior alleged in this case will not be tolerated. Naperville Police Chief Jason Ars also issued a statement, saying, "Every person in our community has the right to live free from intimidation, violence, and hate. Conduct involving threats, physical aggression, and racial slurs directed at a child is completely unacceptable and stands in direct opposition to the values we expect and uphold in Naperville."
Hello, my name is John H. Crawford, Jr. I'm the father of the slain John H. Crawford III, who on August 5th was murdered in the biggest retail store in the entire world. That'd be Walmart. Let me say the name loudly for you. Walmart, where most of America spends their money.
I raised my baby up trying to show them that he was in the car.
An emotional retelling of events from the mother of this baby boy who was shot and killed by a Senatobia police officer. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at 9. I'm Darcy Thomas. Louis Bolden has the night off. Now, that 1-year-old baby boy was shot Sunday at the Walmart off of Highway 51 in Senatobia, Mississippi. Police said they were responding to a shoplifting call, and the driver of the car drove towards the officers. That's when an officer fired into the car, hitting the baby, Kohen Wiley. Well, today, supporters of baby Kohen and his family have set up a memorial at the Walmart in Senatobia. The store reopened this morning after temporarily closing last night following a protest. Now, that protest was also met with tear gas last night, and Fox 13 was there when officers used the chemicals trying to disperse a crowd that had gathered in front of the door. Fox 13's Rob Sneed and our photographer were both hit with smoke and gas. Rob is back in Senatobia tonight. Rob, baby Kohen's mother is now sharing actually her side of what happened.
Good evening to you, Darcy. It was very apparent that that mother was very upset, recounting how she witnessed her child dying right in front of her. And as you mentioned yesterday, with the protesters being here at the Walmart here off of 51, the air is much clearer tonight because there aren't anyone here. You have a few law enforcement up here kind of watching the area, but in terms of the amount of demonstrators, protesters that were out here, the amount of police officers, deputies, none of that tonight as business goes on as usual, but still the community wanting transparency.
One of the shots hit him in his rib cage, and the other shots hit her in her arm and her thigh. And we left and went to Senatobia hospital where he was pronounced dead.
A mother reliving her worst moment of her life. In the video, civil rights attorney Ben Crump's office released today. Valasia Wiley says police officers killed her 1-year-old son, Kohen Wiley, during an encounter with law enforcement outside of this Senatobia Walmart. Wiley says she, her son, and another woman were leaving the store when officers approached. She says she tried to show officers that her child was inside the vehicle.
I raised my baby up trying to show them that he was in the car. So she was backing up and she hit a car as I was opening the door, so the door flew back in. By the time I sat my baby down, it was like 3 to 4 shots.
Wiley says gunfire erupted as the vehicle backed away, and she says her son was struck by a bullet. The driver was also hit, and they took Kohen to the hospital where he was pronounced dead.
They tried to say that she forcefully was trying to drive and hit them, but they was all on the right side, and she was driving towards the left. They just personally just shot in the car.
The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation is investigating the shooting, and they said it would be transparent. But days later, the officer involved has not been identified. For Kohen's family, the wait for answers continue as they grieve the loss of a little boy who never made it home.
And tonight, Wiley also says that she was never charged with a crime. Now, tonight, that boy's family, they say that they want accountability and they want answers. Now, this isn't the first time transparency issues in the city have come up. The details coming up on Fox 13 News at 10. Darcy.
tragic. That is Fox 13's Rob Sneed reporting live in Senatobia tonight. Thank you so much, Rob.
Black babies cost less. Walmart is kind of dangerous for black shoppers, it seems. Context of white supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, June 20, 2026. So I have been told. Our weekly broadcast, Counter-Racist Weekly Review for non-white people, victims of racism, to get a better understanding of what white supremacy racism is, how it works, what it means to be classified as not white. I guess I should do my PSA, right? Technically, this is a holiday weekend, I guess, because we had Juneteenth yesterday, Friday, and so 3-day weekend. Sobriety would be best, and I guess especially because you got like Father's Day tomorrow, so maybe that's double whammy for some in terms of holiday weekend, and then a summer official, right? All that same time kind of. Sobriety would be best if you're going to be hanging out inside. I think they say colloquially, this is strictly U.S. global system of racism. I don't know if this is worldwide, but here in the state, hey, let the folks know that are here for the World Cup. Hey, if you're going to be out on the road, they say this, the 100 most dangerous days on the road. That's what they say. That's what everybody that came from all over the world, drink all the beer in Boston and everything else. Hey, you get out on that road. Buckle up, be alert and sober. Most deadliest time of the year. Certainly for all these holidays, and it's a rack of them coming up because we have so-called July 4th in a few days. So, and particularly for young people, they said young Jaylen Brown was 22. Young people, and I say 20s or teens. You haven't really been driving very long. You do not. When Dr. Cambon, the legend, he would, for folks who are under 32, so your brain computer hasn't matured, maybe you don't make the best decisions yet. Dr. Cambon would stress, he said, hey, I tell my offspring, you are asking for all kinds of trouble, maybe even death. Being out there driving around 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, if you can't get it done during business hours, daylight hours, that is a task for tomorrow. Classified as black, system of racism, you're riding around 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, especially you got 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the car and you all are riding around. What are you doing? Even if it is something construct like going to Walmart, what are you doing? We might have to shoot all of you. Used to say that all the time, particularly if you've been out not up to constructive activity, but up to no good, or even just doing some partying, which is not necessarily criminal, but I mean, hey, are you under the influence? You've been doing the puff, puff, pass, all the rest of it. Are you buckled up? And particularly for so-called holiday weekends, they'll have increased enforcement. They might have those sobriety checkpoints. You do not want unplanned contact with race soldiers, badge or no, when we were out frolicking, not even thinking about counter-racism or having a code. What are we going to do? We get stopped, or even other madness with victims, because there's a lot of that too. Lots of uncodified non-white people and conflict awaiting. We love that. Mess up a good birthday party, pull out my pistol and pow, 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 pow. You looked at me tough. We love that. Negro culture. That's annual rite of summer, really. So, sobriety would be best. Personally, I would avoid be in large groups. You know, I'm curmudgeonly anyway, but I would avoid being in big groups of people like the protest in Mississippi at the Walmart. You said it got tear gas. They said even the reporters got hit with the tear gas and such. So I'm not a fan of those big groups of people that were. I'm not going to be at the World Cup party and all that nonsense. Kind of dangerous system of racism, especially if you're classified as black. Might be, hey, what I say, the worst combination in the known universe. White people, alcohol, World Cup, they said they done drunk Boston dry. I'm going to come in, and you might have white people, they don't even speak English, but they know Negro. Come on. Any hoodles, we will be here on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, white guests only, timed really just with Gus T's FOIA requests and getting the FBI files on Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and seeing how J. Edgar Hoover and his racist cronies at the Bureau and other government agencies had been spying on Dr. Welsing since she was 19 years old. J. Edgar Hoover personally, in context of all of that, do you hear that they said, doesn't make sense without context? Better believe it. But with that context, our guest Wednesday will come to chat it up about more aspects of COINTELPRO. Again, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing at the very beginning of the ISIS papers, where by the time she wrote that book, J. Edgar Hoover at the FBI had been spying on her for 4 decades. By the time she wrote that book, the ISIS papers. But on the front page, she says, hey, you should not say a word about racism if you've not read Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly's book, studied COINTELPRO and its attack on black people who were trying to produce justice, replace racism. Many of us have not been on our assignment in that regard. Gus T has. We will continue with that assignment on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Again, not all, most of the books that have been written about COINTELPRO in some detail are written by white people. Not that that's surprising. Not all. Like I said, Carl Evans, spectacular work. He's featured in the documentary series on the assassination of Minister Malcolm X, more recent series, like 6 parts, I think, maybe more. But his book, The Judas Factor, brilliant, supremely important. Everyone should read that as well. But there are a few exceptions. But generally speaking, most of the authors of nonfiction works on COINTELPRO racism are white people. Maybe we'll correct that as we work to produce justice. Anyway, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com. racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo. Enormous gratitude to all the investors who've kept us on the air for 17 plus years. Hopefully we have been constructive and accurate more often than not. Much obliged for the folks who have kept us rolling. Let's see. They did say that doesn't make sense without context. Indeed. Indeed. One thing I will say quickly, man, that portion of what Mr. Fuller talks about in terms of minimizing conflict, even why he said no parties, because of how we've been conditioned. And so we've been conditioned to behave like mystical. Did you hear it? That's how we've been conditioned to behave. Monsters, monstrosities, conflict. As such, he said no parties. That's why I said no big events and such, even though a protest is not a party, but it's still a large collection of people. And it's, party, large collection of people, kind of unsafe in a system of white supremacy, especially if it's going to be a lot of black people. Ooh. Fuller said no parties. Fuller also said, hey man, I don't hang out with non-white people. Gus T, I do not hang out. I don't do small talk. One, because I'm really poor at all of that, and I think I've conceded that for years. That's not a surprise or anything. The worst social skills, hey, I just missed out. I guess when the creator gives out those skills or what have you, I missed. And I guess, well, you need to work on it. You go, it just totally missed out on that one. Some people, they just never learn how to ride the bike. Gus T just never learned that. You can't even go and behave and talk nice to the people for 30 seconds. Apparently not. So I just missed out on all that. So I don't do the small talk and chatting it up and visiting and all. I just do not do any of that. Fuller say minimize contact. That is Gus T. Why? Because it minimize conflict. I can't stress, just sticking to the basics. I can't stress enough. No cursing at black people. If you think it gets to the point where, hey, Leroy has gotten on my nerves, Gus T has gotten on my nerves, which I'm known to do. Hey, we just will not have contact. That is what to do. But it should not be I got to curse you, be justified, feel righteous because you're so ignorant, heathen-like that I need to curse you. Like, come on. Do we have a code about cursing black people? I thought that was in the 10 stops. I really thought that was in the tops. 10 stops. Are we serious about not having conflict with non-white people? If we are, hey, and I can say, just for the work that I have done this year, 6 months, we have of 2026, and folks can say, you no count, lazy heathen, you sleep all day, wake up and drool on the microphone, talk crazy to do the program, and then go back to sleep. Well, I guess that's your assessment. Okay. But man, just with the work from this year, there have been so many times in different locations, different people even, victims, well-meaning, man, where I've been doing something constructive and they've come and interrupted. Oh man, and not even to talk about racism or something, whatever, just random things, totally random things where it would be like, man, I would really like to get like a bubble or something and, hey, I'm working, I'm doing something constructive, shh, go away, no talking, no talking. And even that, it reminded me, Dr. Welsing and Mr. Fuller, like Fuller said, I do not do all that small talk and just twirling on the phone. He said that is black culture, random talk. He said we will be on the phone all day long talking about nothing. Gossip, what we watched on television, goofy ultra processed foods we ate. That'll be it. I mean, how many folks are going to be talking about a book we read? Oh, that's funny. So back to what we watched on Netflix, ultra processed foods we ate, black people we don't like. I mean, come on. Random talk that is not needed at all. And that is a lot. Like I said, if I had been interrupted by people who said, oh man, new counter-racist concept about blah, 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 maybe that would have been slightly better. Although, like I said, I mean, if you can imagine, if you are engaged, you're filling out an important piece of paperwork, you are in the process of maybe buying a ticket to do some traveling, you're writing a report on racism, white supremacy, something important, and hey, you heard what they seen on the Netflix? Hey man, you got chocolate chip cookies and like, what is going on? What? Anywho, hopefully more of us will be engaged in serious counter-racist work, and maybe even because of that, there will be a synergy that more non-white people, we will think, hey, Leroy might be working on his own counter-racist code book. I'm not going to disturb him. Lakeisha might be doing something serious, help us produce justice. Not going to interrupt. especially with a whole lot of food talk. That would be grand. Grand. Any hoodles. Let's see. What do we hear today? We started off the section from Dr. Kevin Hall. That was audio, but I suspect this is a white person. He wrote or talked, or I guess both, about ultra-processed foods. This is not the same white man who wrote the book Ultra-Processed People, which I used the audio segment to start with, but Dr. Kevin Hall on the segment on New York Public Radio, and he talked about the experiment, scientific, where he got the exact same people, and they were wearing baggy clothes and everything, but get the exact same people, and the only switching up they do is you get ultra-processed diet at one point, and then they switch it around, and you get the more whole foods diet without the ultra-processed foods, and we get to see, what's going to happen in all this. And they said, wow, the people who ate when the people ate the ultra-processed foods, they ate more and gained weight when they ate the ultra-processed foods. Now, they said they don't know. They'll have to dig into the science of, why is that? What's in these foods? What is the biology of why all this is happening? But that was the result that they got. I thought it was even interesting. The caller who dialed in that segment and said that he was taking medication to try to manage his weight. And he said that he loves those sugary breakfast cereals. And I mean, don't we all? Now, I am at this point almost a decade of being plant-based. I think I'm not a food certified nutritionist or anything of that nature. We've had some of those folks on the program over the years, but that is not Gus T. That being said, I suspect some of those breakfast cereals might be vegan, meaning they don't have dairy in them or what have you per se. They don't have any animal products in them. I don't know. I don't eat any of that stuff now, but I know back in the day, the same way he said, Trix. Oh man, I could with that. Now I didn't like Trix per se, but Frosted Flakes. Oh my. Woo, man. I'm going to tell you, and they got all the other goofy ones, the Fruit Loops in that one, Fruit Loops and the Trix and Honey Smacks, and I mean, they got a mile of them if you go to the grocery store. But the Frosted Flakes. Great. Get that tiger on the front of it, man. Oh my goodness. Woo. I can't even share box, man. Got to get the biggest box. And they say small batches. See, that's the secret. You can't get the big bowl. You get regular size bowl, because if you pour a whole lot, it gets soggy really quick. To really get the essence, the peak enjoyment of your Frosted Flakes. Small batch. And you just pour a little bit of milk in at a time. That way it doesn't get really soggy quick, so you can enjoy extra crispy, crunchy. Man, anyway. But man, you talk about wet. I mean, that stuff has got to have like a pound of sugar per serving. Has to. I haven't had it in years, so I don't know. But I'm sure that stuff has got enough sugar to get you right on the track for diabetes, cavities, about 5 pounds of extra weight, like everything bad you can think of. I used to wolf that stuff down like, oh my God. Anyway, but that right there. And he said, I didn't even really change up. I still take my medication and nothing. I just eat me some Trix, and man, that stopped my weight loss. He said, I've been losing all my weight and doing well. Stop my weight loss cold. They said, we don't know. Is it whatever chemicals? Because I think Trix too. I didn't like Trix. That's the one with the rabbit on it, I think. I suspect that's one that's got a whole bunch of goofy dyes and colors in it. Who knows how that impacts your brain computer, your gut health, all the rest of it, all that sugar in it. Who knows? But that would be enough for me. Can't have no Trix in the house. That right there is why we had Judith and Layson as a guest on the program. She's not a certified nutritionist either. She wrote the book, You Are What Your Grandparents Ate. Hey, she said, or she wrote, rather, about everything that they talked about right there and how making those food choices impacts your offspring, your health for the rest of your life, even your grandchildren. in detail about it, and particularly the stages that you get that food. I cannot stress enough. Talked about this before, especially if you're going to have black children. You really have to get your diet correct really before you get to the bedroom. Said that, like, man, it's so much serious to address before you get to the bedroom, before we even get to what we're going to name little Leroy and all the rest of it. Like, whoa, what did we eat today? We're going to have that. Did you have Frosted Flakes today? That's the male or the female. Did you have Frosted? Oh, nap. Ain't even know that. Pull those pants up. We're going to have to go and look at this cupboard before we get to the bedroom. Facts, especially we thinking about having a black child. Oh, man. We got McDonald's wrappers in the house, and all of that. You are poisoning your child. That's what you're eating. You go and conceive, have that child. That's what you're eating while the child is hanging out for 9 months. That's both of you, the male and the female. And then once the child gets here, that's what you all eat in front of the child, and y'all munching and eating, even if you breastfeed the child. But that's what you're eating. Cheetos, Chips Ahoy, Big Macs, Quarter Pounders, Wendy's, all the rest. Come on. Frosted Flakes, Tricks. You are poisoning your child for life because you are setting their palate. That fella, he didn't sound like no teenager who dialed in on New York Public Radio, called in talking about, man, eating the Tricks with the bunny rabbit, the white bunny rabbit on the front. That had messed up my whole weight loss program. That right there. Lots of it. He didn't sound like no teeny bopper. Hey, I don't know how old he was. Like I said, they didn't have video. Could have been in his 20s, 30s, who knows? But I know they have a whole lot of people who are not in their teens, not in single digits, who are old. They've been here for some decades. I used to wolf down that Frosted Flakes, man. Fight you? No, I can't share a flake. Get out of here. Get your own box. Meet all this. That stuff is addictive, and then it's got all those memories of what we did Saturday morning and all the best time, and it's got all that sugar. It's addictive. If you are a parent, you cannot have that stuff in your house, and that's to start your day, to get a big whopping dose of sugar and send you off to school, or even if you're going to be homeschooled. Like, come on. You got to do way better, way better. Try not to have that stuff in your house, really, at all. Like, we can do way better in terms of food. Fuller talks about, hey, correct eating. We're going to do all that goofy cereal. We're going to try as best we can. No ultra-processed foods. Like I said, lots of us just either not knowing how to cook or not having time to cook or an aversion to cooking. Hey, that should be thought of as counter-racism. Cooking to live, eating to live, not just, I've been loving them. I never said I stopped eating Frosted Flakes because I no longer like them. I'm sure they would probably still, I don't know. Your taste buds do, I will say that, your taste buds do change. If you've been eating Frosted Flakes for a long time, that's what you're going to crave. It's going to be really rough. If you switch up to, a smoothie or some organic apple cinnamon oatmeal that does not have a bunch of sugar added to it, maybe they put a teaspoon or two of maple syrup in it and called it a day or something like that. But I mean, Jesus Christ, that might taste like cardboard. If you've been eating Frosted Flakes for years, which many of us have, especially if you've been eating Frosted Flakes since the crib, but your taste buds change. A lot of that stuff is mental. If you can give it a few weeks, maybe even a month or so, depending on how long you've been eating the poison, your taste buds will change and you'll start to grasp, oh, this is what actual food tastes like, as opposed to all these chemicals and all the salt, all this sugar. And yet sometimes if you stay and eat actual food long enough and like, wow, pineapple is kind of sweet by itself. Strawberry is kind of sweet by itself. You go back and get those Frosted Flakes, you won't even be able to get a spoonful down. It will be so sweet, it'll gag you. I've had that experience too. Things that I used to eat in great abundance and then tried to go back and get a little bit of. It was either so salty or so sweet, I could not digest it. Your taste buds will change. Anyway, eating correctly, Fuller talked about that. Dr. Kanban talked about that. Dr. Welsing talked about that. That is a massive component of counter-racism. Eating correctly white. Stacey King, man, I just mentioned he was 59. Privileged black male Stacey King died at 59. He's supposed to have the best medical care, and that's Michael Jordan's homie. Made millions of dollars and all that. He's supposed to be kicking it and going to the Obama Center. 59. Taking his black sons to the Obama Center. Gone at 59. Buried before the center even opened. Eat correctly. Really emphasize that every time you sit down, every time you put something in your mouth. That is counter-racism. Am I eating to replace white supremacy with justice? Massively important. Let's see. The section on the religion of white supremacy in England, where the church said that they were going to do reparations for slavery. And they said that they now are encountering all these voices of opposition and said, oh, it'll be harmful for so-called race relations if we engage in all of this shaming of white people and exploitation of white guilt, and even sound like they were trying, not all white peoples is racist. Sound like that's what they were saying. They said, hey, now we had some white Brits. They worked for emancipation. They worked to get those dark people free. Not all white people's racist. That's what it sounded like they were saying. I do not think, retract. I know, based on logic, history, and evidence, just like you can be classified as white, vote for President Obama, and still believe in and practice white supremacy racism. There were many, not you can be, there were many, according to the record, many people classified as white, men and women, who were opposed to so-called slavery, but they still believe in and practice white supremacy racism. Anyway, that whole idea of white guilt and or white shame, I just have not seen any evidence, just following the logic, that white people feel guilty or shame about practicing racism. I do not. I see total pride, defiance. That's what we were supposed to do to them Negroes. Matter of the religion. What is this with the church? God told us that's why them Negroes are here. To serve the white man, the white woman, the white child. That's what I put them there for. That's what they said for centuries. What do you mean we shame about all this now? What? Even exploit white guilt? I thought it was the Negroes. Weren't we talking about slavery and people being lashed and sold and beaten and raped and not compensated for their work? I thought they were the exploited. When did people classify it as white victimhood? Like, are you serious? Worldwide, they got that on lock. White people are Michelle Alexander told us yesterday her white mother was a victim of racism. She'd been exploited. Make you want to vomit. At any rate, but religion of white supremacy racism, they said they had a window where they maybe could have gave out some nickels and we gonna do better, but the window has narrowed. Like, Let's see. We had the section on, I paused for Stephen Lawrence. They will talk about race relations are so great in the United Kingdom. Yes, Stephen Lawrence. Yes. Even his mother, Baroness Doreen Lawrence's race relations are so wonderful in Britain. Let's see. They had the section moving back across the pond in Philadelphia where the exhibit on George Washington's slaves being brought back to Pennsylvania, they had the exhibit to call attention to this on a judge and the rest of them on how President Trump has snatched this exhibit down. Said that they want Mr. Frank Langford, black male victim of racism. He said that he was stunned. He was surprised to learn that George Washington brought his niggers back to Philadelphia. That surprised me a little bit. Now, again, pause. If anyone is ignorant about racism, it is black people, including Gus T. Renegade. That's why I do the program, so that we can learn, do better. But why would you be surprised about a white person bringing their niggers along? That's their property, like their suitcase or their best suit. Why would that be surprising? There's a long record of white people trailing their niggers all over the world. I think Thomas Jefferson, he took Sally Hemings to France. They love to check me. Gus, you don't know what you're talking about. Blah, blah, blah. Please verify. I might be wrong on that one. I hadn't planned to bring that up today, but I do think that did occur, where Thomas Jefferson snatched old Sally Hemings up, who he was raping as a black child, snatched her off of the Virginia Monticello plantation, and they ended up in France, unless I've been misinformed. Lots of other instances in between there, but I don't know why that would be surprising that George Washington, I got to take that. The slaves were valuable property. And of course, I'm going to take my niggers. Why wouldn't I? We going to brotherly love? They don't allow niggers? Rocky going to get me in trouble if I bring my niggers to Philadelphia? Come on. They don't have a system of white supremacy in Philadelphia? Since when? Anyway, I do appreciate Mr. Langford, and it's Langfitt. I do appreciate his counter-racist efforts to, once he got this information, hey, I'm going to make a whole exhibit and we will call attention to this, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, so we can call attention and educate people about this history, this aspect of white supremacy racism locally. Brilliant. Love it. Make more people aware. Maybe they'll be motivated to produce justice. And even in my view, might be some evidence that what he was doing was constructive. If you get President Trump and powerful white people in the federal government said, whoa, nigger, you don't come up here with it. Said, you don't tell no ugly history. That's one of them, Mr. Fuller, those phrases. We said, what do you mean ugly history? Is this true? That is the number one question. Not is this ugly? Is this pretty? Incidentally, I don't know what pretty history is. Is that Rocky number 1, 1976? Is that pretty when he went up Apollo Creed? Yeah, whoa! That's pretty history? I don't know. You have to tell me. I don't know what ugly history is. You want accurate record of what happened. Now, if they were putting up lies and no such person as Ona Judge existed, George Washington didn't own slaves. He didn't bring them to Philadelphia. Psst, right on. Get that crowbar and hack all that stuff down today, because we don't need no more lies. But if Mr. Langford, if all this is accurate, if this is historically verified, oh man, what's the problem? In fact, Fuller say, in a system that is primarily maintained, operated, refined through deception, who would have a problem with a historical exhibit that is accurate and truthful? Racist man, racist woman, racist child. And they get the crowbar. We're going to take all that. And they said, that's the segment where they say, hey, doesn't make sense without context. Soundbite for us specifically. That is, racists work diligently, constantly, to erode context for non-white people, so we cannot make sense of the world in which we live. What's happening? What's going on? What? All day long. All day long. We are confused. Confused by whom? Usual suspects. They do it. We gonna come. They say you come and you get an index card, a discarded sheet of recycled paper, and think you're going to scribble down some notes and put up the replacement temporary placeholders. We're going to come take those down every day. Hey, We don't even take Juneteenth off. You put it up on June 19th, I bet you it ain't going to be there June 20th. Dedication. That's not ignorant. That right there. That ain't colorblind. That's not ignorant. That's you just giving accurate information about the system. That even you are eroding founding fathers and George Washington, and we're supposed to celebrate the history of it. Yes, this is what we're celebrating. The history of white supremacy racism on a judge. Incidentally, I don't think that's ugly history. Black female, slave, say I'm going to get my liberation or die trying. Hey, that's the best of the best, right? Might inspire some of us to produce justice, maybe. Even under difficult circumstances, like on a judge faced. No, we don't want to talk about that. Get that Rocky. Play that one more time. That white man beat that black, beat old Apollo Creed down. That's right, man. That's white man. Let's see. They have the segment I did include about the poor state of health care in the Lone Star State for so-called Hispanics. I included that one just, man, if it's that bad for so-called Hispanics, non-white people, I'm assuming these are not white Hispanics who are having a tough time in the Texas healthcare system. If it's that bad for them, it cannot be that great for black people. And I know, we got Mo in Dallas. We got Cal's listeners, investors in the Texas area. So Dr. Gerald Horn, it's a substantial, Vontae, it's a substantial population of black people in the Texas area that we talked about for many years. So if the so-called Hispanics are having that tough a time trying to get medical care in Texas, man, it cannot be that great for the brothers and sisters in Houston, Dallas. Maybe they look out for Wemby. He does have a white mama, though. Rest of us that's born here got two black parents. You probably going to be struggling in the Lone Star State if you get a cold or COVID. I think that was one of the areas that was kind of tough for COVID-19 because you had the white people say, there ain't no such thing as COVID. They lied and made all that up and everything else. Anyway, and that's one of the places that was resistant to Obamacare, unless my memory is bad. We don't want to have all these niggers getting great health care or even getting access to health care that they didn't have before. But they talked about it, and even they said so-called Hispanic, and we've talked about myself, Mr. Fuller, others have talked about that term should not be used. It is not logical in a system of white supremacy racism. White, non-white. Lupita Nyong'o, you did hear that segment where they had been celebrating so-called Juneteenth in Mexico. I don't celebrate anything, but hey, it's black people in Mexico. Lupita Nyong'o. I'm sure they got some black people, black Hispanics in Texas. Do they get the double whammy? They go in there, hablo español, and you look like Lupita Nyong'o, like, oh my God. Vámonos. What's your experience like? Anyway, but that was multiple reasons why I included that segment for healthcare in Texas, and that's another one you add in with diet, because I'm sure you got a lot of non-white people. They get crammed in areas where it's probably a long drive to get to a grocery store to get fresh fruits, foods that are not ultra processed. Maybe you don't have to go and hang out at the Dollar General to get whatever fare that they have that's probably not going to be organic Brussels sprouts and yams, beets, kale, spinach, broccoli, carrots. The segment, the section, Pamela Evans Harris. Pause for Pamela Evans Harris, guest many times on the cows, even though she does have a book on the worst list ever. Black Love is a Revolutionary Act. But the late Pamela Evans Harris, Gus T interviewed her. I wrote a piece way back. I can even stand by your work. We have been here for 17 years, way back in 2015 when the Obama Center was announced that it was going to be in Chicago. Gus T wrote a report. I guess that would be one why reading Writing about racism, white supremacy is very important. Reading and writing about racism, white supremacy is more important than watching television. But I wrote a report about the Obama Center and if that was going to be a weapon of racial dislocation, aka gentrification. And Pamela Evans Harris, she lived in Chicago for many, many years. That's where she transitioned. And I asked her, she was aware of this. She kept up with politics, certainly as folks were aware. And so I contacted her and said, hey, I'm writing this story and let me interview you and talk about some of the concerns that she and many other black people, especially black people who lived in the Chicago area, had about the Obama Center. And is this going to benefit black people? Is this going to end up displacing a lot of black people? We talked about now more than 10 years ago, Pamela Evans Harris, myself, we talked about, oh man, is this going to drive up property taxes, rents, so that black people are no longer able to afford living here, as has happened with some other examples where they put some ritzy new facility or some new attraction close by, and now lots of white people in an area that did have a lot of black people or white people did not want to be. Now it's a tourist attraction. We want to come and live down here and put in our cafes and dog grooming parlors and all the rest of it, and property taxes go up, all the rest of it, and now black people can't afford to stay here. Or the property gets sold to new management. We want to remodel, make this condos, quadruple the rent, and now it's no longer black people here. We had talked about all of that happening, as I said, more than a decade ago. In fact, there were black people in 2015 when this was announced who said, wait, and this even tells you the context for what that area was like, with lots of black people. And then incidentally, Woodlawn, that is one of the regions, unless I've been misinformed, that John Burge, the infamous race soldier who used the electric box to shock the testicles of black males. Say you did it. Confess you did it. That's one of the areas, Woodlawn, that he patrolled, unless I've been misinformed. Lots of different terrorism to attack black people in Chicago, because they got so many of them. Mike Jordan. Anyway, but in that segment, or with that, the Obama Center going there, there were black people who said way, way back, we don't even need a Obama library or whatever. Not that they were opposed to him having it or what have you, or even it being in Chicago, but just we don't need that in this particular area. What we need, again, for context, what we need is a trauma hospital. That's what they said. Where some place where you can take a black person where they can get their life saved if they should be a victim of a shooting. That right there gives you the context for the system of white supremacy in that part of Chicago, where they might say, hey, we didn't want these niggers here anyway. Get them on. It's great. Hey, it's this urban renewal 3.0. We get rid of all the riffraff, and now we can have the right people come in here and enjoy and take part in all the wonders of the Obese Center. They said in the report that we played from WBEZ, they said, man, they got millions of dollars in protections that were supposed to safeguard against the very things that we and many others feared was going to happen. Didn't even use the money. Didn't hire staff. They had penalties, the landlords or the property owners, if they were going to sell. They were supposed to offer it to the tenants first. They didn't even do that. Sold to someone else, didn't let anybody know. It's supposed to be penalties for all that. Didn't enforce anything. Now again, white people do not punish white people for practicing racism. We've just seen way too many examples of that. Frequently, white people don't punish white people for violating rules at all. Frequently, it's we really go after rule enforcement with dark people. White people, maybe we get Jeff Epstein, maybe we don't. Donald Trump gets impeached. Is he going to be president again? I guess so. Gets impeached repeatedly. He going to be president again? I guess so. Rules apply to black people first, maybe to white people, maybe they don't. But as relates to black people, we can break all kinds of rules because we just want these black people here anyway. Beat it. Property sold. Beat it. We remodeled. We're going to have condos here so we can have nice high rise and great views of the Obese Center. It'd be lovely. But no, nigga, beat it, beat it, beat it. We got new plans that don't involve you. Beat it. Now, we won't need no trauma center. In this part of Chicago, everything is nice, peaceful, white. We thought that, and some frequently in the system of white supremacy racism, you can see that, oh man, knowing it is going to happen does not give you any power or equip you in any way to stop it from happening, because it seems like they tried to do the correct things and got laws passed and legislation to be helpful, and it went with that sort of thing happens frequently where, hey, they already have lots of laws where racism is not supposed to be practiced, but it's done anyway. The problem is generally not more laws. Even in this instance, they got funding, didn't even use it. Got staff positions where we can hire people and do it. Not even going to hire folks. Could have got some of the black people who need a job to help with that. Nah. To be expected. Speaking of to be expected, the section on Michael Tyler, better known as the rapper Mystical, spelled with a Y, 20 years, no parole, and I suspect that victim was a black female. Like, wow. Mr. Fuller said monsters and monstrosities. Painful illustration. Wow. 20 years, no parole. Whew. He's 50. That means you can be 70 when you are. Whew, man. I am. Hey. He said, if that's what I did, I deserve whatever sentence is handed down. I concur, but I mean, whew. Now, that even goes back to what I said. Now, minimize contact. That certainly is not the end result of every bit of contact between black males and black females, or black people in general, but man, they said he had done this sort of thing before. Like, do what? Oof. Monsters and monstrosities. First, that Fuller did say, first time, last time. That should be brought up. Any so-called, hey, we're going to be so-called dating, sexual activity, all that. Hey, first time, last time. Jesus, that is, black male privilege. Don't know what to say on that one. 20 years. No parole. It sounds like deservedly so. Let's see. The monsters and monstrosities. The section on Jaylen Brown in Milwaukee. I was in Milwaukee for Juneteenth last year. I had literally just stepped off the plane this time last year to get back to Seattle, where I kept saying, oh my God, I'm so thankful to be back. It is so dangerous in Milwaukee. I could have died out there, even though I'm glad Sade C. Robinson, and certainly Sade C. Robinson. But man, it is, hey, Sade C. Robinson, it is dangerous in Milwaukee, especially if you are classified as black. 22-year-old Jaylen Brown shot and killed by the police. His black mother says he was assassinated. She said she was able to view some of the police body cam footage where her son was shot. She said he had mental health issues. The system of white supremacy would be more than enough to cause that for all of us, per Dr. Welsing. They shot him, her son. She said, per the video, he's prone on the ground. They say he's got a weapon, a firearm. They tell him, throw the gun down or let go of the gun or whatever the command is. And he says, I can't move. And they step forward and bam, kill, shot, center mass in the chest. Like, wow, is that protocol? Like, if you've got, particularly for a suspect who's been shot and is down, that's how you've been trained. Is that what the protocol is? Like, you got a suspect, he's been shot, he's down, you think he's still holding the firearm, as opposed to other means to disarm him, kick the gun out of his hand, or whatever else is supposed to be done. You step forward close enough to fire center mass, to fire a kill shot? Whew. I would say, I guess, if we needed another reminder, whether you have a bright orange safety wallet or a firearm, legally, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, or whatever the case may be, hey, you can expect to be shot and killed on the spot. Justifiably so or no. That, hey, black male, I'm out here, police get called, I want to take every precaution. What Mr. Fuller say, comply. You can be shot and killed in about 5 seconds. Armed or no. You got a screwdriver, cell phone, pistol, rubber band. You can be killed in about 5 seconds. Even a 1-year-old at the Walmart, you can be killed in about 5 seconds. Comply. The section, Mr. Feichenbaum, the 9-year-old in Napier, black child, where the white man, race soldier, called him a nigger, grabbed his bike and threw it. This was after the white girl had, I guess, wrecked their fort, and the child went to the house to go report, like, oh man, you know, white girl, your child and messed up my fort. And I guess the white man, good, nigger, get out of here. He grabbed his bike and threw it and all that. Now, they charged this suspected race soldier, Feichenbaum, they charged him for terrorizing this child. But I don't have children. This is why you have to talk to your children about racism, white supremacy. This was a 9-year-old black boy. 9. This is why you have to talk to your children before 9. What does it mean to be white? What is racism, white supremacy? I've seen so many situations just like this where a black child or a group of black children, they got a whole documentary that just came out. I think it's on that. Don't we do the Netflixing? We do some Netflixing. Y'all seen it. What's it? It's The Good Neighbor. Isn't that what it's called? But it's about that situation, almost exact same thing, where it was a group of black children, non-white children. They had been playing outside, and a white woman had been terrorizing them and get out of here, and vigorous and harassing them. And the black mother went over to address this, and the white woman shot the black mother through the door, I believe, shot and killed her through the door. And the documentary talks about how all this happened and all the conflict around all this and what happened. But hey, what does it mean to be white? Talk to your children about this, because hey, as I just said, sometimes these white people are armed. Often they are armed. It could have been he goes over and this white man is armed and starts shooting at this black child. Came over here and threatened my white girl, talking about you going to rape her and all the rest of it. Pow, pow, pow. Or the parents of this black child come over. You don't talk to my child that way and throw his bike and so and so and so. Pow, pow, pow. Get out here, nigger. You don't give no lip to me. Pow, pow, pow. That sort of thing happens all the time. That's why I said I am so thankful I do not have children. Because, I mean, that would be any parent's instinct to protect their child and to be upset, rightfully so, if someone has threatened your child or thrown their bike or called them a racist slur or anything of that nature. But, ooh-wee. This might be a race soldier who is ready. I wanted to shoot a black person. I wanted conflict with a black person so I could say, hey, I was standing my ground. Maybe shoot a whole lot of black people. You would have to be, and even tell, that's why I said we've had enough situations where we've had listeners who do have children, where they've had things like this start. I remember we had a black mom who was at a basketball game and somehow things got rowdy. They were upset. We're not going to let your child hit it, and all this. And police get called. Other white people intervene. Like, don't you get mouthy, woman. Shut up. Your child is a gangster, isn't she? That's why we're not letting in all this other stuff. You have to talk to your children. We are in a system of white supremacy, racism, and even I, your attempted parent, explaining why you say that, I am in a weak position as it relates to these white people. White people are very, very dangerous, and especially so for people classified as black like us. We have to be very serious, very calculated in how we behave, respond, even when they have aggressed against us. We have to take special care in how we respond because they are so dangerous. This can end up being a situation where someone has been killed. In fact, you just saw Carmelo Anthony. And I still say that's a loss for the black people there. Anytime you got a black mother on TV crying about my child is going to be in prison until he's almost 55, that is not a win. But now he's 17. I said last week, I'll say it again. Carmelo Anthony should have known years before that fateful day. Hey, if something happens where I have to kill a white person, I'm going to have to answer to racists. I'm in Texas. We can't even get good health care. I can't even get a Band-Aid. We're going to have to answer to racists. I said, but you know it's going to be all white people on the jury. Certainly ain't going to be no black people, which it was. You know that in advance because you know we are in a system of white supremacy racism. Anything I do, who are we going to have to answer to? It's not like I just get to do this and that's going to be the end of it. Oh, no. Talk to your children. I know that, hey, you're going to have children. That is a massive response. You can't eat Frosted Flakes like you used to. I got to get my words right to tell my 8-year-old, my 7-year-old about what it means to be racist. Yep. Tough job. Hardest in the world. I've been said it's the toughest job in the world. Man, you can't have Frosted Flakes. Toughest job in the world. But you don't have to have the children. We told you, Bay Area, you don't have to have the children. I wouldn't say then you can eat all the Frosted Flakes that you want. Because that's not, Mr. Fuller said, we're supposed to be eating correctly. But you don't have to have that conversation with an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old. You say, I'm really ignorant and I can't get my words together and I just don't want to do it and I'm scared. Hey, don't hop in the bed. Don't do that conception part, and then you don't have to do that. You still can't eat all the Frosted Flakes you want, but at least half of it, you're good. They had the section on Kohen Wiley. Again, I don't have children. And it was at the Walmart. I said so many black people have a tough time at Walmart. Jonathan Crawford III. That was 2014. I even remember the black male who had a concealed carry permit, and he tried to go into the Walmart, and he got tackled and beaten. He said, "Nigger, you don't come in here with no firearm. What is your problem?" No. Now, they did arrest the white man for assault in that case because the black male was a legal firearm owner, just like Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. I said, hey, you're a black person and you have a firearm. Hey, I could be shot and killed almost on the spot just for having this firearm. Any hoodles. But Jonathan Crawford III, and then who had the toy, he didn't even have a real gun. He didn't even have a real gun. He had a fake gun at the Walmart. Shot and killed on the spot. And then, as I said, black male around the same time period who had a legal firearm permit, concealed carry, and thankfully he was not killed, but he did get a good wallop upside the head, or 3, before security broke things up, and they did take the white race soldier away, but that was at a Walmart. I do not know all the details about the situation in terms of if there was a shoplifting that happened or whatever. I didn't know that they were supposed to fire a pistol, a firearm over an alleged shoplifting. Like, that seems, That seems a lot. But hey, system of white supremacy racism. I was reminded of the black mother who was shot in Washington, D.C. 2013. Miss Carey, she had her child in the rear of the vehicle, and I think her child was 1 year old. Her daughter, I think she was 1 year old, and they fired into the car. They killed Miriam Carey. They killed her. Her child survived, thankfully, but hey, somebody has been saying for years, white people do not care about children. Someone has been saying that for a very long time. But Miss Wiley's mother, Miss young Kohen Wiley, his mother, Valesia Wiley, with a V, Valesia Wiley, she said that she held her baby up to show enforcement officers like, whoa, there's a child here. Hey, racist man, racist woman. Just going by the record. Devontae. Black babies cost less, and white people do not care about children. I do not think white people are going, oh, that might be a black child. Oh, whoa. Guns down. Let's be extra. I just do not. Ayanna Stanley Jones, do y'all remember that one? We can get our Chicago history on. I guess that was ugly moment too, whatever that means, but that was Chicago PD. I don't even think that was John Burge. And they burst in to get a privileged black male, and they shot and killed Ayanna Stanley Jones, 10-year-old black female. So I just have not seen any evidence, really, at any point in time, that the white people, whoa, that is a black child. And if anything, they see a Tamir Rice or a black 10-year-old, a black 11-year-old, whoa, that is a 40-year-old 7-foot. That might be Wimby's cousin. He been out raping too. Shoot him 15 times. It's, oh man, that was old 9-year-old. Dang, I could have sworn he looked like he was about Wimby's size, I think. Dang. Oh well. I've seen too much of that. Again, I don't know if there was, shoplifting or what have you going on. I would say system of white supremacy racism. If you go to a store and are doing some shoplifting or what have you, I guess sometimes they might just let that go. I've seen some situations where they just will yell and scream and whatever else. I have seen a number of situations where sometimes this will be a fatal or at least a violent exchange over paper towels, pamper, like something really small. Again, I don't know about the shoplifting component. All I know is a 1-year-old is dead. A 1-year-old black child is dead. And I cannot imagine. Now, I will look if other people can find cases. I just can't imagine. Even if it was suspicion that you stole whatever the priciest items that they have at Walmart are. I don't know what that would be. Maybe some electric equipment. I guess they have maybe lawn mowers and lawn care stuff that might be kind of pricey at some, furniture type, whatever the priciest things that you could take from Walmart. But say you went and got the 10 most expensive things, threw them in your basket, and just ran out the store and ran to your car. It's hard for me to imagine if that was white people, this is going to erupt into gun battle. Even if the police say that their vehicle kind of swerved in our direction, that this is going to erupt into gunfire. Like, I would challenge anyone, find a case where the police shot and killed a white child, and this was all over a dispute about shoplifting. I mean, you could even go upscale, like Godiva. Like, get some, whatever the priciest stores in Beverly Hills are. And we go and to do some looting out there. It's hard for me to see that this erupting in gunfire where a white child was shot and killed. Even they got mad about that up at Ruby Ridge, and you got accused white terrorists accused white race soldiers out here in a feud with the federal government, and a white child got rid. Oh my Lord, you should be shamed. Ain't everyone is mad with the federal government? Like, what? You don't kill no white child, and I don't care with the parents of race soldiers and all that. You don't kill no white child. Really. Incidentally, I said again, I'm just not an advocate. I'm not saying that they did anything incorrect in Senatobia, Mississippi, where they went to protest after this event happened, to protest, and, this is incorrect. But I remember Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and I believe it was in the year that Jonathan Crawford was killed at the Walmart, because people were out in the streets. That was the same summer of Michael Brown Jr. and Eric Garner, where people are out in the streets and hands up, don't shoot, and all the rest of it. And she said then, it wasn't even no fear of the Rona. She said, avoid being out in large crowds. There's so many variables, so many unknowns. You don't know all of these people. You don't know their motivations. Have they been paid to come here? Do you have provocateurs and informants and all the rest of it? The police, what are their orders? Are they just going to be peaceful? If there are so-called counter demonstrators, racist thugs, who say, hey, we don't like your protest, and we're going to come in and beat up black people. Are the police going to allow this to happen, as has been the case sometimes? Are they what they said in Senatobia? Are the police going to say, hey, you all don't have proper paperwork for a protest today. This is private property, and you got to get out of the Walmart Walmart parking lot. We're going to give you 30 seconds, and pow, 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 pow. They start firing tear gas and plastic rounds and all the rest, and you can be killed from those plastic rounds. They have cases of that. So I am not an advocate of going for no protest, even after they've killed. I would say this: if I was killed, if they had some FIFA madness up here in Seattle, or gay pride madness, or both, and I got gunned down, I would, particularly not no whole lot of black people. Oh no, because we've seen that before. The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, large gatherings of people, and a black person ended up being killed. So I'm just not an advocate. I haven't seen we're getting large groups of people together, even after they have a police killing or something of that nature. I've not seen where that produces justice or even gets an indictment sometimes. Like in this case, like I said, I don't know, I haven't seen the dash cam or body camera footage or anything of that nature, and I try to avoid that sort of, especially for a child like that. But I haven't seen all the particulars. I haven't got the police report for this case. But man, if the police are able to, hey, this was a shoplifting, these niggers disobeyed us. They said that alone in Mississippi, these niggers disobeyed us. Case closed. That's what I would expect. That could apply anywhere in the world under the system of white supremacy racism, but especially in Mississippi, these niggers disobeyed us. We told them to stop, and they kept going. That's going to be that. And they were accused of stealing. And if they add on, they swerved the vehicle like they were trying to ram us with their car after thieving, and they weren't going to stop. They were hell-bent on making their escape. They're going to probably have that one. Justified. That's what I would expect. Justified shooting, tragedy. Maybe we settle. They said they got Benjamin Crump. Maybe we settle, give the family some money. Maybe not. And Walmart will admit no wrongdoing. That's about what I would expect for the whole thing. And we ain't going to have no more protests on our property. Y'all better get down the road with all that. Find another spot in Senatobia if you want to yell and grouse about poor Kohen Wiley. That's about what I would expect, especially from Mississippi. Like, woo, we talked about Jackson. Okay. Spirit of Medgar Evers. Okay. Spirit of James Meredith. Okay. Gotcha. I remember even with Jackson, I said, man, it's hard to organize to do something about white supremacy racism. You can't even drink the water. Senatobia isn't Jackson, so I don't know if they got a major lead problem for their water. But I know Jackson, that is the case. We talked about that in detail, along with their long history of terrorizing black people. Medgar Evers. Anyway, I'm not a parent, so I'm thankful I do not have to think about all of that and going out and dealing with a police stop and having a child in the car, what's the best way to proceed? I would just say I would not hold the child up. I do not. If anything, maybe put the child down and cover them with your body to act as a shield for them. And maybe you can try and let them know verbally that there's a child in the vehicle, that matters, or what have you. But again, comply. Comply and comply. That, and incidentally, that's also why I said they were in a vehicle, right, in the parking lot and all this. That's why I said when you are in a vehicle and it's late at night, it goes up even more in terms of the risk, because then you get the easy excuse. We couldn't see. It looked like they had a gun. It was so late and they were so dark and niggardly and it was so dark. We could just say anything. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's, for most people, it's already assumed. If you are classified as black and it's dark, it's after 10, 11 o'clock at night, you are up to no good. Even, real talk, a lot of non-white people, the assumption will be you are up to no good. You are not picking up trash off the street at 2 o'clock in the morning. You are not going to get a fresh box of Pampers for your newborn at 1 o'clock in the morning to fend off an emergency. You're not going to get your wife a vegan snack because she got hungry late. None of that. You are up to no good. You were going to rob the Little Caesars. You were going to do some raping, or both. So you being out late, that's just going to amplify the likelihood of any, whoops, we had to shoot him 15. I'm not saying it's correct, but just, hey, that's going to be a part of it. If you are out late at night and you get stopped. Hey, Jonathan Ferrell, remember that one? I think that was 2013. My memory might be bad, but I think that was one, and he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything. I remember we had to emphasize that over and over and over. He was not driving with a white woman. He was not under the influence. He was not smuggling narcotics. He was a privileged black male in college, and he had vehicle trouble. That could happen to, has happened to all of us if you drive long enough. Innocent vehicle trouble, went to a residence to try to get help, went to a white person's residence, and it was not, oh, he had vehicle trouble, can someone go? It was, oh my Lord, nigger is trying to jump in. You are up to no good, which is what the police, you are up to no good, and you're dead. System of why, again, I'm not saying Jonathan Ferrell did anything wrong, because he didn't, but he was in North Carolina. That's Dr. Cam Bond. But what I am saying is system of white supremacy racism, it is already dangerous. Once it's 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, oh man, everybody now, they gets to lie and say, oh man, I was fearful because, nigga, what is you doing out here at 2 o'clock in the morning? And then it's 4 or 5 of them. We got a gang of them at 2 o'clock in the morning. We had to shoot them all, or even if it's you by yourself. Keep that in mind for the so-called holiday weekend, if that's what they say. Father's Day and Juneteenth all sandwiched together and all the rest of it, and then summer official. Keep that in mind. Tell young people, if you have teenagers, they're home, maybe they were at college, maybe they graduated high school, or even if they're still in high school and they're just out for the summer and they're looking to do what normal children do, have young people do. I'm going to have fun, kick it with my friends. We're going to go to the pool, go to the beach and all that. We are in a system of white supremacy racism. Many black children are victimized in the system of white supremacy racism. Try your best to stay safe over the summer, even from those 100 days of danger on the road, being sober, being buckled, being alert, because there's probably going to be a lot of intoxicated motorists also going to the beach, and we're in a system of racism. Just the fact that, hey, you got how many? 1, 2, 3 black people in a car? Oh, man. Lots of people might be looking, uh-oh. Call the police right now. I think they're looking like they're going to rob the Bank of America right now. Talk to your children seriously about this so they can survive the summer safely in one piece, even avoiding those parties with lots of non-white people, because they also can be extremely dangerous, even for older people who are not in their teens and 20s, people in their 40s and 50s. They get a teaspoon of the mad dog, and the way we have been conditioned to have conflict with other black people, and we engage in our normal petty name calling and picking and cursing at black people, and I got to tease you because I know you lost your money on the finals, and kerpow, kerpow. The graduation or the family reunion or the Father's Day jamboree done been ruined. Minimize contact, minimize conflict, avoid them big crowds. That said, we will be here on Wednesday, normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, number 720-716-7300, the code 564943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Lock that number in for Wednesday. You can dial in. Listen, we'll have our white guest here. You can use the free VOPE line as well, particularly white people, non-white people who is more informed about racism. Any of the programs about COINTELPRO that detail all of the surveillance that white people have conducted on black people worldwide, I think those are massively important in terms of just reminders about which one of us is ignorant about racism. Oh, yes, it's the Gus T side of the board, the black people, the non-white side. We are the ones who are ignorant, because you can look at it the other way. Hey, how many books or times have you heard about there being so-called, or people who are classified as white, where they go and spy on white people, come back and report to black people, non-white people, tell us what that side of the chessboard is up to? How many times have you heard that? They tell us all the time. It's poor, down and out, bedraggled white people with no teeth. West Virginia, Appalachia, right. They say it all the time, right? You're telling me through all these years, Oprah Winfrey, Diddy, Bill Cosby, we couldn't have gone to recruit some of these poor, bedraggled white people to go and spy on white people and snitch and report back to us? We haven't been able to do that in all these years? All the snitching seems very one-sided, where people classified as white, they can go get all of the snitches that they want that are classified as black or non-white to go and do all kinds of snitching and spying and reporting for them. It's not the other way around. That right there, that's what domination looks like. And again, if anybody is ignorant about racism, white supremacy, what it is, how it works, it is non-white people. Maybe especially if you're classified as black. Gus T still named at the top of that list. Anyway, but we'll be here on Wednesday. COINTELPRO, I think it'll be summer official by the time we get to Wednesday. Any hoodles, much obliged for the folks who tuned in. Hopefully worthy of your time and energy. Sobriety would be best, especially for this here weekend. If you are an older person, maybe you can model that for the younger folks, that you do not have to have a teaspoon of the mad dog just because the calendar say it's Father's Day or, whatever, Juneteenth or whatever. We got to have a teaspoon because it's summer official. Water. As a matter of fact, drink more water. Get some cherries and real food. Drink more water so we can get through the summer safely and undiabetically. Incidentally, even for my eating, I will get my brag in. Yesterday, Gus T did not do no ultra-processed foods. Gus T spoiled on the plantation. I had yellow watermelon for the first time this season, and it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm generally not disappointed with yellow watermelon. Generally, every time I get it, wow, it was amazing. But I had yellow watermelon and some of the best cherries that I've had in a long time. Yesterday, for Gus T to get cherries and yellow watermelon on the same day what they eating high on the hog. None of that counts as ultra processed. What the ingredients say: cherries, watermelon, yellow watermelon. It did specify that this is not going to be the regular yellow watermelon, but that's all it says. And no goofy yellow number 5 and all that other old craziness. And that, even I would say that right there, you can go to the farmer's market and all that for the people with the ultra processed foods and all of that. Man, there should be no way that we get more. That's just the triumph of Whitey. That is the triumph of racist man, racist woman, racist child, that we get more excited about Frosted Flakes. And hey, that used to be Gus T. Get more excited about Frosted Flakes, Cheetos, hot fries, hot dogs, Slurpees. Get more excited about that sort of nonsense that is not correct eating at all than real food. Cherries, watermelon, things that are at peak season right now. You can't even get cherries all year long. Hey, cherries, got that candy bar over there? No. You got any more than Frosted? No. Come on. Like, to take advantage, try and get some fresh fruit. Go to the farmer's market. I say that all the time. Go to the farmer's market, get that fresh fruit, as opposed to having all that crap. Maybe for the summertime, hey, you can have honeydew, you can have watermelon, you can have cherries, strawberries, peaches, plums, all of the above. You can have all of that at your disposal, as opposed to fill in your, nonsense. I'm going to do that as opposed to loading up on all this nonsense and see if I got a sweet tooth, see if I can, summertime, I'm going to see if I can have some of these ripe fruits so I can eat better, get some fiber, as opposed to chumping on all that processed white sugar and stuff that's just going to be terrible for our diet, terrible for our teeth, terrible for our vitality, to replace white supremacy with justice. We'll wrap there. Make sure, don't think Gus T just on here doing all that. What they say, Gus T, sleep and eat. All you do is sleep, eat all day long, then wake up, you probably go and wolf down white sugar yourself. Nope, not at all. And I got organic cherries. Harriet A. Washington, she told us, try to eat organic so you're not getting all those chemicals and poisons that white people dump on all of the food. She says, especially if you're classified as black. I know some people have theorized it might not be scientifically verifiable or true, but I do know some have theorized that, hey, because non-white people, for whatever reason, melanin content or whatever, non-white people may be much more sensitive to all of the harmful chemicals and side effects of the food. You see, it has a detrimental impact on white people too, but it might be worse for non-white people, so we should take special care to do our best to eat correctly. Might not be true, but at least, hey, maybe that's something to think about. So that every time we go get that fork, get those chopsticks, get that spoon, that plate, that cup, is what I'm about to put in my mouth helping me counter racism? Is this helping me replace white supremacy with justice? Is this something that's going to help put me in the grave? Creator, remind us, stop saying. Now, we did have some white people. They fought against slavery. They worked for emancipation. John Brown, remember, we got to talk about old Potawatomi Brown. Remind us, stop saying. Not Michelle Alexander said that. Hey, you got some white people victims of racism. White woman who marries a black fella and has a bunch of mulatto children, she also would be a victim of white supremacy. Oh my God. Second lamest book I've ever read, easily. Michelle Alexander. But even she said, not all white people are racist. My white mama ain't no racist. That's what Jared Ball said too on our program. My white mama ain't no racist. Creator, remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name calling people classified as black. Even Benjamin Crump, stop name calling and cursing people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.